Chapter 1101, First Encounter II. Li Chenghui looked up, and Li Xiaowei continued. Whether Taoist Master Xuanyi is truly being held back by Chunyi Dao is uncertain, but as for Kong Gumo of Jingyi Mountain, it is unlikely he feels no regard for the Kong family. If I were Changxi, I would certainly leave behind several bloodlines for myself. Kong Gumo may well be Changxi's final arrangement. Suppose my Li family were to break our word, refuse to shelter the Kong family, seize what we want, and split it with capital Immortal Dao. Or worse, cast the Kong family out entirely to curry favor with Yi Hui, a mid-stage purple mansion realm cultivator. Li Xiaowei started to leaf through some books. Then the inland Kong family would surely face annihilation. They would not even be able to preserve its main bloodline. Kong Gumo, the child who severed ties, would become the Kong family's final ember. As a disciple of a Purple Mansion Realm Taoist master, Foundation Establishment Realm would be guaranteed for him. Since he refuses to aid his family, he is clearly a white-eyed wolf, so none of the Purple Mansion Realm Taoist masters would pressure Taoist Master Xuanyi to kill him outright. Li Chenghui immediately understood. You mean? Taoist Master Xuanyi might have accepted benefits from Changxi, and the condition may not be to save Profound Peak Gate, but rather to stay out of the conflict and protect Kong Gumo. Not necessarily. Li Xiaowei said as he picked up a brush. Changxi is a clever man, and clever men do not seek suffering. Since he told us that Jingyi Mountain would be an ally, the conditions may indeed include helping Profound Peak Gate, though perhaps lightly or heavily, as a duty or as a best effort, or done at their discretion. Even a token gesture would count. That way, when our Taoist master visits, there will be an explanation to offer. This matter is not yet fully settled, and we must not place too much weight on Jingyi Mountain. Most matters inland will ultimately depend on ourselves. Li Xiaowei paused in his writing and finally revealed a trace of concern as he continued. These are mere trifles. What worries me most is that the Taoist master has yet to return. No matter how difficult Profound Peak Gate's situation became, it was still just Profound Peak Gate. The Li family could always withdraw, and Li Xiaowei was confident in his ability to adapt to any changes. But Li Ziming must not come to harm. If anything happened to him, not only would Moongaze and Profound Peak Gate collapse in an instant, but Li Xiaowei himself would be forced into exile overseas. Great Void. A vast and empty darkness stretched endlessly into the distance. Li Ziming, draped in heavenly light, sat silently upon a flight of white steps. Above his head, a celestial gate stood as a bastion in the darkness. Dragon banners and phoenix carriages drifted noiselessly through it, while golden-armored figures above the gate stood motionless like statues, each in a different posture. Only the white-gold banners stirred gently, casting down streams of heavenly light like countless golden threads drifting softly through the air. Beneath the celestial gate were 3 white steps, each more than a few meters high. Li Ziming sat cross-legged on the highest step, torrents of violet flame flowing around his body. He remained silent, and his hands were locked in a sealing gesture. Outside the celestial gate, a dense dark purple radiance surged and retreated, almost merging with the void's blackness. From time to time, the heavenly light would disperse a portion of it, revealing an even denser surge of divine ability mana that sealed the entire gate within its grip. Yi Hui did not speak a single word, pressing his divine ability upon the great void and forcing Li Ziming to sit and respond. A suffocating silence lingered between the two. Li Ziming could even sense that the other party had no desire for a fierce battle. He was merely restricting him to this location. Although he held the Profound Peak Gate's treasured artifact, the mountain-charging sea-pacing tiger, and could use it to leave this place and rush to Li Xiaowei's aid if a crisis arose, Yi Hui too had his means. Li Ziming had no wish to truly clash with him. He simply sat there quietly, though the feeling of being restrained by another's ability was deeply unpleasant. Yi Hui's strength was undeniably superior. Li Ziming could feel the precision with which the man's divine ability mana pressed down and shrouded the great void. With the divine ability of South Chu waters veiling the area, he could not even discern the distances within the void. All he could see was a narrow patch of land beneath his feet, facing directly toward the wilderness. Seeing Guan Gongxiao and the others be forced to retreat brought Li Ziming a measure of comfort as he thought to himself. The ones who died were all Profound Peak Gate cultivators, which means none of ours have fallen. As for Shanji Prefecture, our family won't be holding it. I wonder if Purple Smoke Gate would even want it. Although the Li family had repelled the capital Immortal Dao in this great battle, Li Ziming knew all too well that it did not mean the remaining territory could be held. The shared border was far too long, and the longer the conflict lasted, the harder it would be to defend. The fact that both sides had now withdrawn to rest meant only that the Li family had the right to dispose of what was left of Shanji Prefecture's territory. If need be, I should ask Sumian of Xuanmiao Temple and Ling Mei of Sword Gate that both border us. It's better that they profit than the capital Immortal Dao. But those were matters for after his return. He immediately stopped thinking about them. The violet light before him showed no sign of weakening, and he grasped the gold-patterned mystic pearl in his hand, preparing to flee. But then he reconsidered. The mountain-charging sea-pacing tiger is a rare and excellent spirit artifact. Although it belongs to Taoist Master Changxi and has appeared before, Yihui only arrived in Jiangnan a little over 10 years ago, so he may not know it. If I use it to flee now, he'll get a clear look at it and remember it. If something happens later, I'll have lost an element of unpredictability. With the thought that any card he could save was one worth saving, Li Ziming remained still. After 15 minutes passed in silence, he sighed lightly and called out, "Fellow Taoist, do you have any counsel?" He waited a few seconds before Taoist Master Yihui's figure finally emerged from the great void. Lifting his head, Yihui cast a deep, steady gaze at him and said, "Fellow Taoist Jiajing, would you be willing to speak about the matter of Profound Peak Gate?" "To hell with your Profound Peak Gate. What new scheme are you plotting now? Just lift your damn divine ability already." Li Ziming paused for a moment before replying. "Senior Changxi entrusted Profound Peak Gate to me and Taoist Master Sumian, so naturally we must ensure this immortal gate's stability." Since Taoist Yihui wishes to talk, we can speak. Yihui cradled a ceremonial Dharma sword in his arms, his expression calm as he spoke. "I have heard that the bright Yang Dao is not skilled in escape spells. If I were to debate the Dao with you here and keep you trapped in this place for 3 to 5 years, I imagine it would not be a pleasant experience." Li Ziming frowned. It was true that he was not adept at escape spells, and the heaven-venerating gate contained no divine abilities related to such spells. Yihui also possessed body divine abilities that were more than sufficient to suppress him. Yet with the mountain-charging sea-pacing tiger to make up for his weakness, it was hard to say whether he could truly be stopped. But he did not know what methods Yihui had, nor had he ever truly fought against a Purple Mansion realm cultivator. Moreover, this one was mid-stage at that. After a moment's thought, he decided to hear out his nonsense and asked, "What exactly do you mean?" Yihui's tone suddenly softened. "There is a cultivator within Profound Peak Gate by the name of Kong Heiying. If you can deal with him, then you and I can sit down and talk and divide Profound Peak Gate between us." The man arched an eyebrow and smiled. "I know your esteemed family values its reputation. On the surface, I can put up a fight. When we reach the boundary we have agreed upon, both sides can stop. The Profound Peak Gate cultivators will naturally feel grateful and become your loyal dogs, and I will have eliminated a hidden threat. Would that not be a win-win for us both?" Chapter 1102, Walking in the Great Void. To kill Kong Heiying. Li Ziming felt nothing but disdain. Strictly speaking, there was nothing truly irreconcilable between the capital Immortal Dao and the Li family thus far. Yet Li Ziming did not believe in the slightest that Yihui's goal was solely Kong Heiying. If all your moves were aimed at Kong Heiying, then why the sour face toward my family earlier? Since Yihui spoke so directly, Li Ziming decided to play along. His expression shifted slightly in feigned surprise as he replied, "Fellow Taoist Yihui, did Kong Heiying not perish long ago? The disturbance in the Profound Peak Gate's earth veins before Senior Changxi's death was the very phenomenon of his fall." Yihui was briefly stalled by this sudden fabrication and fixed him with a heavy stare. The person in question should, by rights, be Fuan, but if it truly were Kong Heiying, Changxi calling him Fuan on purpose would also make sense. For a moment, Yihui hesitated. Whether Li Ziming's words were true or false, they had scattered Yihui's original plans and prepared words. He said coldly, "Oh, whether this is true or false, no matter. Let me see your bright Yang divine ability." The great void stirred as he spoke. A solemn, heavy sound echoed through the dark purple radiance floating above and below the void, and a wave of damp water vapor rose from within. A multicolored fish about the size of a calf emerged from the radiance. Its purple scales were illusory and varied in shade. Atop its fish head rested a human skull of bare white bone, its empty eye sockets deep and hollow. The purple fish flicked its tail, and countless others surged forth from the purple glow, swarming together beneath the heavenly gate to form a river that shot upward. When he saw that Yihui was going all out, heavenly light surged from the center of Li Ziming's brows, and the gate behind him roared in response. A heaven-shaking battle cry rang out. Countless golden-armored figures atop the heavenly gate suddenly came to life, descending with spears and swords in hand to meet the assault. When they clashed, they held the purple river at bay beneath the gate. Yet Yihui exhaled a stream of white chi with a thunderous boom. It seemed to weigh 1,000 kilograms as it sank instantly, and the great void froze in place. Li Ziming, along with the entire heaven-venerating gate, felt like they had been trapped in a mire, sinking bit by bit, unable to advance or retreat with ease. No wonder Changxi dared not cross spells with him. This Eastern Feather Mountain alone. This old man already wields considerable control over the Great Void. Li Ziming recognized this as Yihui's second divine ability, the Eastern Feather Mountain. Grateful that Bright Yang was no weakling in spell combat, he deliberately refrained from using a spirit artifact, intent on testing his own combat ability. He opened his mouth and spat out Bright Yang purple flames. The purple flame was usually nurtured within the juke court, but now that it was spat out in a single breath, it surged forth in an endless stream. It was no ordinary flame. Light and fire roared as the force of birth and transformation swelled, crashing into the congealed Great Void. Li Ziming did not need to directly contest the Great Void suppressed by Eastern Feather Mountain. The gout of purple flame gathered into a single point, and no matter how powerful the suppressive divine ability was, it was easily pierced under this concentrated force, burning open a pinhole-sized breach. That single breach was all he needed. A single point within the Great Void could become a wall or a gate. Li Ziming and the heavenly gate behind him vanished together, slipping effortlessly free of the South Chu waters and Eastern Feather Mountain's blockade. He reappeared in another part of the Great Void and turned into a stream of heavenly light as he fled. Thus, Yi Hui, a dignified mid-stage Purple Mansion Realm cultivator, failed to exert any pressure at all on a newly advanced Purple Mansion Realm opponent. After just 2 exchanges, Li Ziming had already escaped. So this is the Great Void. At that moment, Li Ziming finally understood just how difficult it was for Purple Mansion Realm cultivators to battle one another. The Great Void was like a vast net full of holes. A Purple Mansion Realm cultivator could swell as large as Mount Tai or shrink as small as a mote of dust. How could anyone hope to lock another in place? Meanwhile, Yi Hui was not surprised in the least. As his body divine ability circulated, his figure surfaced once more at the edge of the purple radiance, driving the entire mass of light to shift and envelop Li Ziming again. Eastern Feather Mountain descended once again, and the mire-like pressure returned. This time, however, Yi Hui's hands were weaving seals. The instant Eastern Feather Mountain manifested, the Great Void beneath Li Ziming twisted and hollowed, causing his foot to slip into emptiness, preventing an immediate escape. Yet Li Ziming displayed no fear, gathering flame in his mouth and spitting it directly at the Dharma sword in Yi Hui's hand. The Dharma sword resisted the flames slightly, but a razor-sharp aura rose from the Great Void. Li Ziming recognized it as his opponent's spirit artifact. He suppressed the urge to draw his own and let heavenly light surge from the center of his brows as he shouted, "Kai!" Dazzling heavenly light instantly flared throughout the Great Void, finally revealing a gleam of brilliant gold. Heavenly radiance, hidden light burst forth from the center of Li Ziming's brows and crashed down with a thunderous impact. Li Ziming had only cultivated heavenly radiance, hidden light for a short time. It drew upon the innate divine ability of the Purple Mansion realm and his own heavenly light at the center of his brows. The combination of both abilities managed to block the spirit artifact's force. "I may not match you in a duel, but can I not simply leave?" thought Li Ziming. Once was practice, twice was skill. Purple flames surged around Li Ziming as he escaped once again. Yi Hui stepped forward in pursuit, appearing close behind as his Dharma sword thrust straight toward him. Li Ziming immediately summoned the heavenly gate to block with divine ability, but felt a sudden chill in his hand as a streak of purple light shot up the back of it. Li Ziming blocked the divine ability without serious harm and seized the chance to widen the distance, flying for several seconds. When his opponent closed in again, he was wiser this time and spat a mouthful of purple flame directly onto the sword, dissolving the Eastern Feather Mountain's energy once again and escaping unharmed. Yet as he shifted sideways this time, the Great Void suddenly grew steeper, making each step difficult. His spiritual sense swept out, and sure enough, he saw the distinct pit water formation. A glance toward the manifested world showed towering mountains beneath his feet, streams winding around them. They had reached Mount Xianyu. Li Ziming had no intention of seeking aid from the Xiao family. They had simply fought their way into the portion of the Great Void above Mount Xianyu. Here, the Great Void was as steep as a 1,000-kilometer mountain, making movement difficult. It was not because of any art or formation, but due to spiritual energy itself. Mount Xianyu had the most potent spiritual energy in the Lixia region, and so the Great Void above it was extraordinarily steep. Yi Hui clearly realized this as well. He possessed the body divine ability, South Chu waters, and the spirit crow technique beneath his feet, which made him far faster than Li Ziming in this place. He quickly traversed the void, but Li Ziming blocked his strike with a breath of purple flame and vanished, reappearing instead in the manifested world. If movement in the Great Void is so difficult, can I not simply move through the manifested world? He burst out in one breath, causing his opponent to miss. His vision brightened as he appeared above several spirit mountains, where a small family seemed to reside. A few cultivators were battling in the air, and as Li Ziming's divine sense flowed, he instantly recognized the patterns on their robes. The Wu family of Southern Lixia Prefecture. So I've already reached the southern edge of Lixia. Several Wu family cultivators appeared to be fiercely battling devil cultivators. As Li Ziming took a single step forward, the weather above shifted in an instant from drizzling rain to the warmth of spring. Raindrops that had not yet touched the ground evaporated in midair as heavenly light illuminated the sky and colorful clouds drifted gently. A Purple Mansion Realm cultivator. What? a purple mansion realm cultivator had suddenly appeared above them, and every cultivator on the battlefield froze like a statue. The leading devil cultivator nearly blew his own head apart, his mind going utterly blank save for one frantic thought: what? It is just a raid for some spirit patties. Is this really necessary? Chapter 1103, Walking in the Great Void. The fierce clash instantly dissolved into chaos. A flying sword drifted uselessly into the sky, a spellcaster nearly bit off his own tongue, and the devil cultivator who had raised his shield halfway froze in terror, letting his head be chopped off without resistance. The Wu family cultivators on the other side lost all will to fight and nearly tumbled from the sky. Zhao Shooting was likely not here, and Li Ziming had no interest in paying them any attention. Without pausing for even a second, he vanished in a flash of heavenly light beneath his feet, flying toward a distant, untraceable horizon. Yet even though he merely passed them from a considerable distance, the devil cultivator in the front was caught off guard. Li Ziming's escape light brushed him from afar, and purple flames roared up as heavenly light flared. A sudden pressure struck his chest, his hair and beard were incinerated in an instant, and his robes burst into flames with a sharp whoosh. Had he been an ordinary cultivator, it might not have been so bad, but as a devil cultivator, his flesh and skin were seared along with his robes. The onlookers were struck dumb, too terrified to even attempt fleeing. Fortunately for him, Li Ziming had only appeared before him for a brief moment and paid him no mind, racing several kilometers away before vanishing entirely. Even so, the devil cultivator screamed in agony as his Dharma robe was reduced to ashes. Before the group could even breathe a sigh of relief, the great void split open once again. The sky, which had only just cleared from rain, darkened with heavy clouds, and solemn, reverent chants echoed through the Yihui materialized before them, clad in a deep blue Taoist robe. His eyes, bright with spiritual light, swept over the surroundings. At that moment, Yihui was operating his body divine ability, South Chu Waters, at full power. Nearly half his body had transformed into a purple halo and was further strengthened by Eastern Feather Mountain. That single glance struck like a thunderbolt under clear skies. Yihui vanished in a moment, but only after he disappeared did the 6 cultivators react, crying out in pain as purple light dragged them down from the air. Li Ziming had not yet left the Xianyu region. The moment the spiritual energy eased even slightly, he slipped back into the great void, but Yihui's purple light flared again right behind him. South Chu Waters was indeed fast, forcing Li Ziming to take another of his blows. Looking up, he saw the profound Peak Gate's mountain gate just ahead, but Yihui was already upon him again. The Dharma sword in his arms gleamed as every ghostly blue rune upon it lit up. Yihui's face remained cold and grim as he pursued Li Ziming. He formed seals and chanted an incantation, and once more, a wisp of white qi leaped from his lips. When the white qi shot forth, Li Ziming felt not only the ground beneath his feet sink, but also the great void before his eyes shift. The stable earth formation light of profound Peak Gate dimmed in an instant, as though veiled by a hazy white glow, and even the great void under his feet grew uneven and unstable. Eastern Feather Mountain still has such power. Li Ziming's spiritual sense stirred. The great void around profound Peak Gate had become as still as dead water, and the entrance to the purple mansion realm formation now appeared hazy, shifting between near and far. He had known that the divine ability mana of Eastern Feather Mountain could affect the Great Void, but he had not realized it could wield such subtle influence. He spat out flames and slipped free of the Great Void, entering the manifested realm of Profound Peak Mountain. A vast expanse of purple radiance blanketed the mountain like smoke and mist, drawing the awed attention of cultivators across Shanji Prefecture. Yihui sat calmly atop it, astride a pitch-black crow. No wonder Yihui is confident he can drag this out for 3 to 5 years. With entanglement like this, escaping him will be truly difficult. Even if he cannot kill me, he could easily wear me down to light injuries over the course of a few years. Li Ziming could not enter, but he felt little discouragement. As long as Yihui was determined to entangle him, even entering Profound Peak Gate would only mean being trapped in another place. For now, it made little difference if he remained outside. But he had already prepared his retreat before coming here. How could he let himself be trapped so easily? He watched coldly as Yihui's purple radiance swirled above Profound Peak Gate. Still, could Taoist Master Kilao possibly remain seated through this? He let out a cold laugh as he slipped into the great void once again. Though he could not enter Profound Peak Gate, he darted back and forth around it, circling and weaving in an unending pursuit. Even after taking several blows from a divine ability, the purple aura remained locked over the mountain gate for 15 minutes. Li Ziming knew that Su Mian cared deeply for his reputation, so he deliberately kept the stalemate with Yihui going. As more and more cultivators gathered around, Li Ziming slipped into the great void again and finally saw Taoist Master Su Mian reveal himself in the distance. The old Taoist sighed and spoke, "Fellow Taoist Yihui, cease your actions. I gave my word to Taoist Master Chengxi to safeguard Profound Peak and cannot stand idly by. Taoist Master Changxi had died within Sumian's own Xuanmiao temple, and even his corpse had been delivered to its gates. Which cultivator in Jiangnan or Jiangbei did not know of this? Lake Xi'an remained under Xuanmiao Temple's protection. The capital Immortal Dao had simply chosen not to attack. But now that Yi Hui had brought the fight to the mountain gate itself, Li Ziming was striking again and again without Sumian showing himself. Such an action would leave his reputation in tatters. Sumian had cultivated his reputation for centuries, much of which was tied to his legacy after death. Naturally, he could not abandon it. Forced into action, he stepped into the great void, and with that, Yi Hui finally halted his assault. So it is Taoist Master Kilo. Yi Hui chuckled and replied, I was merely sparring with Taoist Master Zheijing. I did not expect the disturbance to grow so large as to trouble you, old master. In that case, let us end it here. He seemed to share a fairly cordial relationship with Sumian. After casting a deep look at Li Ziming, he turned back with a smile and asked Sumian, I wonder, Taoist Master Kilo, how long a term did you promise to Taoist Master Changxi? I have been meaning to meet with you these past few days precisely to discuss matters concerning Profound Peak Gate. If swords can be turned into silk and peace achieved, that would naturally be best. Sumian responded briefly. Meanwhile, Li Ziming brushed away the lingering mana from his wrist without paying Yi Hui any attention and said plainly to Sumian, I recall you saying you would heal the people of Profound Peak Gate. One member of the Kong family has been crippled, and 3 others gravely injured. I will send them to you when the time comes. I'll trouble you with their care. Li Ziming had no intention of exchanging hollow courtesies with Yi Hui. Since Sumian had appeared, it showed he valued his reputation and was not one to break his word. The people of Profound Peak Gate were severely wounded, and if someone else could be troubled to tend to them, there was no need for Li Ziming to do it himself. Sumian simply nodded at his words, watching as Li Ziming offered a perfunctory bow and departed. Yi Hui too flicked his sleeve and took his leave soon after, leaving Sumian with a throbbing headache. I still need to find a way to resolve this matter. Time is growing short, and I must devote my energy to that devil fetus. I cannot afford to keep wasting time dealing with these two. Sumian let out a weary sigh and made his way back to Xuanmiao Temple, pondering quietly as he went. I must also find a way to open the treasury of Mount Zioshi and resolve this matter quickly. Otherwise, idle eyes will keep turning this way one after another, dragging me into their mess and tying my hands. Chapter 11:04 Changxiao and Yi Hui. After traversing through the great void for a while, Yi Hui returned to his own Bei Mountain. There Guan Gongxiao was kneeling before a stone stele at the mountain's summit, his forehead pressed tightly to the ground as he spoke with utmost respect. Greetings to Taoist Master. Your disciple has failed in his duties. We suffered casualties, lost men, and even misplaced a Dharma artifact. I beg the Taoist Master to punish me. Silence. Yi Hui raised a hand to stop him and frowned. This matter is not your fault. Our objective was achieved, and Profound Peak Gate suffered heavy losses. We reclaimed the territory we were meant to reclaim. It's only 3 Dharma artifacts and not ancient ones at that. Guan Gongxiao kowtowed repeatedly, wanting to say more, but Yi Hui swept him aside with a wave of his hand. A moment later, even his shadow had vanished. Pity about Guan Can. He was an old veteran, yet he was killed by Li Xiaowei. Still, he served his purpose to the end. It's not a loss in the grand scheme. Yi Hui poured himself a cup of tea by the table. After 15 minutes, someone stepped out from the great void. The Taoist master who appeared wore a robe embroidered with cloud patterns. His face was kind and gentle, like that of a benevolent elder of a family, though his eyes were narrow. He sat down by the table, his mood seemingly pleasant. After all the circling and scheming, this old thing finally got his way. Yi Hui inwardly held nothing but displeasure, yet outwardly he smiled and said, Greetings, fellow Taoist Changxiao. This man was none other than Changxiao, master of Changxiao Gate. It was once a name that had resounded far and wide of a man who had carved his way through the 3 sects and 7 gates to achieve the Purple Mansion realm. Changxiao smiled faintly. Greetings, Taoist friend. How fares your cultivation of the 3rd divine ability? The Purple Mansion threshold is difficult to cross, take care. Yi Hui smiled without answering and asked instead, It has been many years since I last saw fellow Taoist Chengyan. How is he faring these days? Yi Hui had arrived in Jiangbei later and had not been involved in the Anhui Heaven affair, though he had heard bits and pieces. He bore no grudge against Chengyan. He simply detested fools and could not resist bringing him up. Changxiao understood the barb in his words and replied casually, him. He raised a promising disciple a few years ago, one who seems on the verge of bearing fruit. Since then, he's been reluctant to leave the sect until he has perfected his 2nd divine ability. Yi Hui hesitated for a moment before finally steering the conversation back to serious matters. We've spent considerable effort on this, and my side has sacrificed more than a few people. The goal has at last been achieved. Taoist friend, can you see it clearly now? I have seen it clearly. An odd expression, tinged faintly with excitement, appeared on Changxiao's face as he nodded. Li Xiaowei is indeed tied to the destiny of metallic essence. I used my life divine ability to witness from afar. It was the form of the white Qilin itself. All these years of suspicion truly had a basis. At last, we have a lead. Yi Hui seemed uninterested in his excitement and said in a measured tone, "To help you confirm this, I provoked the Li family for no good reason, lost an elder, disgraced myself, and failed to fracture Profound Peak Gate. I'm letting unforeseen variables arise. The price I paid was steep. You have truly troubled yourself, Yi Hui." Cheng Xiao was clearly in high spirits. He laughed heartily and cupped his hands in thanks. Sima Boxiu is always on guard against me, and several families around the Divine Lake hold resentment as well. Without your righteous aid, it would have been quite difficult for me to uncover the truth on my own. Yi Hui, seeing him circle around the topic without getting to the point, lost his patience. He offered a polite smile and asked, "Fellow Taoist Cheng Xiao, can you now hand me the crimson-headed profound soul?" No need to rush. Cheng Xiao chuckled twice before answering, "This matter is not yet over, and you have yet to fully refine your third divine ability. Crossing the Purple Mansion threshold is no easy task after all." He paused, then changed the topic. "Descending souls is a life divine ability, and there are many Dao lineages in Jiangnan and the like. You've never cultivated it all these years, surely because you disdain those lineages and have something far better on hand. To even go so far as to need a treasure like the crimson-headed profound soul, I imagine it would take at least 40 or 50 years of difficult work. Why such urgency? Once this matter is resolved, I will of course hand the item over to you." Old fox, nothing but empty promises. Yi Hui was dissatisfied but could only nod in agreement as Cheng Xiao continued, "You may not have heard, but I have received word that the Bay Sea Dragon King has been inactive for many years. The thunder will soon subside, and the situation will grow far more complicated then. We would do well to settle this matter quickly, then retreat into seclusion for a few years." Yi Hui himself was a cultivator of the Eastern Sea, so how could he not know? He replied, "That hardly counts as news." Cheng Xiao understood his temperament well and said simply, "But I do have a piece of good news to share with you." He smiled. Xuanyi and Chunyi Dao have come to blows, and their battle shakes the very seas. Even the Reef Sea Dragon King had to intervene to stop them. If this is true, then we need not concern ourselves with Jingyi Mountain in future matters. This piece of news finally made Yi Hui nod in satisfaction. Xuanyi was not a small figure, and if the cultivators of Jingyi Mountain had come forth, even his capital Immortal Dao might not have been able to match them. But now that Xuanyi was embroiled in trouble, it was unlikely that Jingyi Mountain's direct descendants would emerge, and that could only be considered good news. After exchanging a few more words with Cheng Xiao, Yi Hui politely saw him off. When he returned to the table, his expression darkened as he stared gloomily in the direction Cheng Xiao had departed. Only after a long while did he murmur softly, "If the crimson-headed profound soul weren't so difficult to obtain, if that old fox weren't the only one in Daoxuan to have a portion, I wouldn't have to endure his coercion like this. It's a pity that far too many arts within my Daoxuan Dao lineage have failed and too much spiritual qi has vanished. Otherwise, I wouldn't have fallen to this state. The Daoxuan Grotto heaven opens so rarely, who knows when the next time will be." Waiting is not an option. He exhaled deeply, rubbed the center of his brow, and ground his teeth. That old thing must be doing this on purpose. The enmity with the Li family grows deeper and deeper. When the day comes that we openly tear off our masks, even if that old fox gives me nothing, I'll still have to help him deal with the Li family. In all honesty, Yi Hui had no desire to target the Li family. Having them block the Azure Pond sect and the Golden Feather sect was not a bad thing in itself, but Cheng Xiao had kept stirring up trouble behind the scenes, and Cheng Xiao had pressed him relentlessly. Yi Hui was deeply displeased, yet there was little room left for retreat. Some things still need to be done. Stall Li Ziming and try to handle this gently. As long as Si Boxiu isn't dead, don't push him too hard. The Li family feared Yi Hui, but little did they know that this Purple Mansion realm Taoist master of the capital Immortal Dao also held a deep wariness toward them. Even in the battle just now, he had not gone all out, as he was merely humoring Cheng Xiao and fulfilling a mission to buy time. If I push Li Ziming into Si Boxiu's arms and force the Li family back into the Azure Pond sect's embrace, then I can forget about even the slightest foothold in Jiangnan. Si Boxiu will make sure the Li family relies entirely on the Azure Pond sect and will intervene forcefully. Once that man steps in, I can abandon any hope of claiming even the treasures of Mount Zioshi. Besides, I came to Zhongbei to establish a sect, not to make enemies. That brat Li Ziming isn't even 100 years old yet. If Li Xiaowei doesn't handle things properly, that's an even greater cause for concern. Yi Hui pondered silently for a long time before finally setting down his jade cup and drawing out his Dharma sword as he muttered, "Eliminating Kang Heiying can only be done through Xuanmiao Temple. Removing him will not only rid me of a hidden threat, but also sow discord between Xuanmiao and Moongaze. Sumian is a peace seeker by nature, so this will not be difficult." Chapter 1105, Taking Stock. Li Ziming rode a beam of light through the great void, emerging high above the wilderness. He lifted his sleeve to reveal the back of his hand, where a mote of violet radiance lingered, emanating a dull glow. Yihui had managed to leave an injury on him during their earlier pursuit and clashes. It was a minor one that hardly affected his Dharma body. An ordinary Purple Mansion Realm cultivator would likely need half a month to recover, but his heaven-venerating gate excelled at grinding down and erasing foreign mana. It would likely be gone within 2 or 3 days. He examined it closely, then raised his other hand and lightly stroked the back of his hand, slicing away that patch of flesh. After lifting it up and studying it in thought, he placed it back. For most Purple Mansion Realm cultivators, if a part of the Dharma body suffers excessive damage, it can simply be discarded and remade. It's merely a matter of which takes more time. Since I can suppress and grind it down, direct healing is usually faster. If it were another Purple Mansion Realm cultivator, they would likely have their own ways. He then stepped down from the air. Many cultivators were still passing beneath him, and Li Ziming did not wish to cause another round of kneeling and bowing. A casual wave clouded their eyes with a spell, and he walked straight past them. He ran into Kong Guxi at the hall entrance. Fu Yuezi followed obediently behind him, carrying a golden spear and a golden axe. The other Profound Peak Gate guest cultivators, only Sun Bai bothered to step forward and offer a few polite words. "Please wait a moment, Gate Master. Let me examine your injuries first." Sun Bai formed a spell seal and began treating Kong Guxi's wounds. Li Ziming glanced over. Among the cultivators of Profound Peak Gate, only Fu Yuezi and Sun Bai were truly noteworthy. Sun Bai belonged to the Grave Verdant Grove, a lineage specializing in healing and nurturing. Thus, the protection he received throughout the battle was no less than that of the Li family members. As for Fu Yuezi, his immortal foundation was the heavenly gilded helm, and he possessed considerable ability himself. He was on par with Ding Weizeng within the Li family. Kong Guxi had performed admirably in this great battle, advancing and retreating with precision, though he had also sustained heavy injuries. Naturally, Li Ziming wished to see him. When he revealed his presence, Kong Guxi, who had been speaking politely with Sun Bai, looked up to see heavenly light gathering and was so startled that he immediately fell to his knees. "Greetings, Taoist Master." The entire group dropped to their knees in an instant. The Jade Court guards on both sides laid down their weapons and knelt as well, producing a chorus of crisp sounds. Li Ziming responded, "Rise." All the unease in Kong Guxi's heart vanished, and a surge of joy rose as he loosened his furrowed brow. Yet along with that joy came a hint of fear, and his face showed reverence and submission. Li Ziming had only just advanced into the Purple Mansion realm, while Yihui was already in the mid-stage. Though he knew that Purple Mansion realm cultivators found it difficult to harm one another, Kong Guxi could not help but worry. Seeing Li Ziming composed and unscathed brought him greater joy than even holding the wilderness, yet the unresolved matter of Jingyi Mountain still weighed on him, leaving a trace of anxiety. Li Ziming swept his spiritual sense over him and immediately saw his condition clearly. The man's lower body had turned into nothing but a skeletal frame. It had clearly been injured by some sharp, baleful techniques from the Capital Guard Dao lineage. It must have been the Western Sky Plateau. Kong Guxi cultivated the Fool's Mountain Chase, and his body was not particularly extraordinary. Li Ziming flicked his sleeve, sending the life-giving energy of Bright Yang into Kong Guxi. The man felt his wounds grow itchy as his whole body warmed. Flesh and skin regenerated and allowed him to stand firmly on the ground again. The regenerative power of Bright Yang could restore flesh and skin, but not cultivation. Even so, it spared Kong Guxi the trouble of taking medicine. The Profound Peak Gate's Gate Master knelt down and said respectfully, "Thank you, Taoist Master." The wounds on Fu Yuezi behind him also healed, though his immortal foundation had forged a Dharma body and his fierce fighting style made injuries harder to mend. This treatment restored only his skin and flesh. He would still need to return and reforge himself. He bowed his head and knelt beside Kong Guxi. This man is truly loyal, thought Li Ziming. He had already taken note of him earlier. Fu Yuezi had fought with ruthless ferocity and risked his life to save Profound Peak Gate cultivators. After a slight pause, and though he no longer held much hope, Li Ziming still asked, "How is Jingyi Mountain?" Kong Guxi could only recount everything that had happened. Li Ziming shook his head and thought to himself, Shanji Prefecture is beyond saving. Kong Guxi still looked uneasy. Although the matter could not be blamed on him, he was nevertheless visibly anxious. Li Ziming said casually, "When the time is right, I will visit Jingyi Mountain myself. As for your Wood Virtue guest cultivator, I will need to borrow him for a task at the lake first." Sun Bai was capable, and his immortal foundation was useful. Li Ziming's own floating south territory was also in shambles, with everyone injured. Since there were things Li Xiaowei was not in a position to say, Li Ziming spoke of bringing Sun Bai into service. He showed no sign of pursuing the matter of Jingyi Mountain, and Kong Guxi finally felt relieved. The moment those words left Li Ziming's mouth, Kong Guxi pressed his forehead to the ground and said respectfully, "Taoist master jests. Our ancestor instructed us before his passing to follow your every command, let alone guest cultivator son. All matters of profound peak gate, great and small, are to be guided by your will. This junior has no right to speak out of turn, nor any thought of overstepping. I await your immortal decree." Li Ziming had long known he was obedient and useful, so this did not surprise him. He swept his gaze around and said, "Now that the battle is over, all of you should visit Xuanmiao Temple. Do not be overly formal with Sumian." He transformed into heavenly light and departed, leaving the Kong family members staring at one another. Kong Guxi had scoffed when Changxi died and did not actually wish to go to Xuanmiao Temple, but with his people's injuries so severe, he had no choice but to ride the wind and follow. Li Ziming stepped into the hall, and Li Xiaowei's eyes lit up as he descended from the main seat. Before he could speak, Li Ziming was already laughing heartily. How impressive. Li Xiaowei knew he was referring to the matter of Guan Can. He chuckled in agreement, then summoned someone forward and instructed, "Bring Ma Shui here." Only then did he speak, that Yi Hui truly could do nothing to the Taoist master. The old elder sent me 3 letters in succession, and now I can finally reply. Li Xuanxuan remained in the lake, his thoughts still lingering on the river. Li Ziming answered with a smile, but Li Xiaowei had not brought this up without reason. Li Xiaowei continued with a sigh, "Unfortunately. Eldarin Siwei was captured. I had sent people to intercept them midway, but Sidu Mo withdrew into his sect grounds the moment he left the territory and refused to move again. When I sent men to inquire, Golden Tang Gate did not respond at all. The old lord mentioned this repeatedly in his letters. I do not know how to reply. And Siwei was captured. Li Ziming felt a headache coming on as well. Although Siwei's strength was lacking, and he possessed no extraordinary Dao lineage or mystical ability, he had been a loyal retainer for many years. The family had been tied to the Li family by marriage for a century. In truth, Siwei's status was little different from that of a Li family foundation establishment cultivator. He understood what Li Xiaowei meant and said gravely, "This matter, we must first investigate thoroughly. If Siwei is still at Golden Tang Gate or has been sent westward, there may still be a chance if we turn to the Golden Feather sect. But if he has been taken to Bai at capital Immortal Dao, then things will not be so easy." Li Xiaowei nodded. A thoughtful expression crossed his face as he replied, "When I crossed spells with Guan Can, the White Kilin manifestation appeared at the most critical moment. Although it broke the siege, I did not intend to kill Guan Can, yet I have no idea what his standing is within the capital Immortal Dao." Li Ziming hesitated slightly, but Li Xiaowei continued seriously, "In the matter of Profound Peak Gate, our house certainly acted out of regard for our ties. But from another perspective, to all the forces surrounding Profound Peak Gate, this is nothing more than a feast for the carving. As the capital Immortal Dao pushes south, whether they gain much or little, they still profit. Xuanmiao Temple, which aided Profound Peak Gate and Maimunge's Lake in a sense, too are taking a share. In this great war, no one has truly suffered losses, save Profound Peak Gate itself, whose centuries-old foundation has been placed on the table." He shook his head, a hint of unease showing on his face as he continued. From Guan Gongxiao's attitude, the battle on the river was about flexing strength, showing power, and seeing who would get the bigger share. But now that a Guan family member has died, I fear Guan Can may have some bloodline background. If our two sides truly come to blows, that will spell real trouble. Li Ziming nodded slightly. He too had sensed something from Yi Hui's attitude and calculated inwardly. Compared to his harshness toward Changxi, Yi Hui seemed to maintain a certain ambiguity in his actions, as if unwilling to become entirely hostile toward me. It seems that to these Purple Mansion realm cultivators, certain Foundation Establishment realm figures are not even worth a furrowed brow. Chapter 1106, Taking Stock II. After some discussion, Li Xiaowei set the matter aside and turned to another topic. "Moreover, now that I have revealed my presence, I fear that falling into the eyes of watchful people will not be a good thing." Li Ziming nodded and sighed. "I finally understand why those Purple Mansion realm cultivators nurture powerful Foundation Establishment realm cultivators. If we had 1 or 2 more reliable pieces on the board, you wouldn't have needed to enter the battlefield yourself. How are your injuries? Though quite severe, they are not serious." Li Xiaowei's wounds were not minor, though they did not hinder his daily functioning. Li Ziming simply said, "Send Sun Bai here. Tomorrow I will make a trip to the Eastern Sea, capture a demonic beast, and refine it together with our family's treasured panacea. That should heal your injuries quickly. Once you take the talisman pill, enter seclusion and break through to the late stage of the Foundation Establishment realm first." After giving his instructions, Li Ziming glanced around to make sure no one was present in the Great Void. Only then did he use secret techniques to transmit his voice. "What does Mingwang think about the matter of receiving the talisman?" Li Xiaowei had long wanted to ask him about this and seized the chance to reply. now that you have broken through to the Purple Mansion realm, has the talisman Qi undergone any transformation? Li Ziming paused slightly and shook his head. No, none at all. It remains the same. It's able to kindle fire, draw in Qi, and refine mana. I rarely engaged in combat before breaking through to the Purple Mansion realm, so among all the brothers I am the least skilled at harnessing talisman Qi. Moreover, the heaven-venerating gate itself can draw fire, so for the moment I cannot discern any new abilities. Li Xiaowei pondered for a moment before replying, I have been considering the matter. First, our family's Purple Mansion realm grand formation has not yet been built, and erecting an altar to request the talisman would draw great attention. Many eyes are already watching you because of me, so it is best to proceed cautiously. If it truly cannot be helped, we should at least conduct the ritual at the profound Peak Mountain. And one more thing. Li Xiaowei paused briefly, then transmitted his words quietly over mana. Since I am about to reach the late stage of the Foundation Establishment realm, wouldn't the talisman Qi's ability to enhance cultivation become wasted? Why not wait until I break through to the Purple Mansion realm? With 2 Taoist masters in our family and an exalted immortal artifact in hand, perhaps we could plan a venture to the southern border or the 4 seas and bring back a Purple Mansion realm demonic creature. By then, we will also be able to observe the various mystical differences in detail. Perhaps this method could even aid in cultivating one's divine ability, catching our enemies off guard, and possibly serving as a trump card. Purple Mansion realm demonic creature. Li Ziming had truly never considered such a possibility and was momentarily stunned. Having broken through to the Purple Mansion realm himself, he understood how difficult it was to encircle and slay a Purple Mansion realm cultivator. Yet the more he thought about it, the less reason he found to discourage Li Xiaowei. Though difficult, it was not impossible, and since Foundation Establishment realm talisman Qi could be used to advance one's cultivation, it would be far better to save it for improving divine abilities rather than spending it in the late stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. Good. He nodded repeatedly, and the two gathered their thoughts. At that moment, Gbuzhai had already sought permission to enter from outside the hall. Kneeling, he said, Greetings, family head. Greetings, Taoist master. I have brought Taoist Maiyashui. Behind him rested a solid and sturdy stone coffin. The old man opened it, revealing a woman whose body had been severed into 3 parts cut through at the neck and the abdomen. Her belly was hollow, and only a shriveled heart remained within the abdominal cavity. Taoist Maiyashui was cut into 3 pieces. Although the mana at the wound sites was neutralized in time and she took the Wanglin Blossom, her life was still in grave danger. The family head ordered Guest-son to piece her back together, and with the aid of my concealed containment palace secret technique, we barely managed to save her. Though the old man was cunning and more skilled at fleeing than fighting, he still possessed a trace of compassion. His brows furrowed as he looked at Maiyashui and pleaded, I have known her for years due to matters concerning the water veins. Although Maiyashui once roamed the Eastern Sea in her youth and her mana is not entirely pure, she is a good girl that's usually quiet and well-behaved. Li Ziming glanced at Maiyashui and nodded. It is enough that she still lives. He took a pill from his sleeve and placed it inside Maiyashui's abdomen. A beam of heavenly light descended from between his brows, and the life-giving energy of bright yang manifested. Maiyashui's complexion immediately turned rosy. She suddenly exhaled sharply and sat up straight, looking around in a daze. After 2 breaths, she climbed out of the coffin. Her eyes, bright and clear, were filled with tears as she bowed. Thank you, Taoist master. Li Ziming inclined his head slightly, faintly surprised. After brushing against death, Maiyashui's gaze seemed clearer than ever, and her entire demeanor had changed. Tears streamed down her face as Li Ziming said, but your injuries were too severe. The Juke Court has been damaged. Techniques and spell arts related to them can no longer be cultivated, and breaking through to the Purple Mansion realm is impossible. After some time, when the opportunity arises, I will help you heal the Juke acupoint. Maiyashui wept uncontrollably. As she had been hacked into 3 pieces, she had felt herself dying bit by bit. It was a torment and shock no one else could understand. She kowtowed and said, Thank you, Taoist master, for saving my life. I do not hope for divine abilities, nor do I seek any such marvelous arts. Having been granted even a single thread of life, I feel a joy beyond words. All else matters no more. I only wish to return to my mountain, see my parents once again, and embrace them in tears. Li Ziming's expression grew complicated, while Li Xiaowei nodded and dismissed the two. He then said, Ding Weizeng displayed remarkable power in floating south, fighting many alone and retreating with ease. If not for him and the Chang'eming profound insight screen, floating south might have been lost for a time. Even so, he has suffered heavy injuries. He swept his sleeve over the desk, and 3 Dharma artifacts immediately floated onto the table. Each gleamed with radiant Dharma light, their edges smooth and their inscriptions intricate. All of them were supreme-grade artifacts. Li Ziming nodded and smiled at the sight. The capital Immortal Dao has spent so many years in the Eastern Sea and then reaped a great harvest in Jiangbei. They are indeed overflowing with wealth. With these 3 Dharma artifacts, the losses at Floating South and the Wilderness are almost negligible. Li Ziming's words were rather conservative. Even the life of a rogue Foundation establishment realm cultivator from the Eastern Sea might not equal the value of a single one of these artifacts. The few profound Peak Gate guest cultivators who had died at the hands of the capital Immortal Dao were certainly worth less than these Dharma artifacts. Li Xiaowei chuckled. It is precisely because these Dharma artifacts are powerful that refining them takes time, a month or 2 at least. That's simple. Li Ziming raised an eyebrow, gathered mana into his mouth, and blew gently. A stream of radiant light swept over the artifacts, and all 3 were immediately refined by his divine ability. Heavenly light lifted them into the air. The first to stir were the series of cold iron rings wielded by Guan Can. These silver rings, 18 in total, were each about the size of a fist and all bore pit water patterns. Li Ziming said casually, "These are the pit metal chain rings, a high-grade Dharma artifact of the pit water, primarily used for binding and entanglement. Though inferior to the 6 profound thunder punishment tokens or the profound insight screen, they can nearly match Mingong's scarlet flame lamp." Chapter 1107, The Sword Gate's Retrieval I. Li Xiaowei had been restrained earlier by the pit metal chain rings, but he had fortunately and unexpectedly subdued them with his immortal foundation, or he would have faced far more trouble. He said, "This item may not be highly lethal, but its restraining power is remarkable. Against cultivators with powerful Dharma bodies, it is a tier above most tools, perhaps enough for 1 or 2 people to trap them." Li Ziming nodded. Such tools were of little use to him, but they were treasures to Foundation establishment realm cultivators. He replied, "This artifact is primarily for restraint and works well, but our family has no pit water Foundation establishment realm cultivator. The closest we have is Maya Shui, a single cultivator aligned with the water virtues. She contributed greatly in this battle, but many were injured. The pit metal chain rings are precious, and casually granting them is not a wise way to manage the family. Let us store them for now and only bring them out in wartime." Li Xiaowei put away the pit metal chain rings, then picked up the pitch-black capital Dao Bell. Sweeping it with his spiritual sense, he said in mild surprise, "It is pure essence." Pure essence was the most common Dao lineage among rogue cultivators, especially in Jiangnan. 8 out of 10 rogue cultivators belonged to the minor pure spiritual Qi Dao lineage. Most of them never advanced beyond the embryonic breathing realm, and a single Dharma artifact might be passed down for 3 generations. As a result, pure essence embryonic breathing realm artifacts were extremely common. Pure essence cultivators were plentiful at the lower levels, but far fewer reached Foundation establishment realm. Still, they comprised a significant portion of cultivators in that realm. As for pure essence cultivators who reached the Purple Mansion realm, Li Ziming had never even heard of one. Foundation establishment realm artifacts of that lineage were rare too, and those he had seen were crude and unimpressive. This was the first time he had encountered one of such fine quality. He turned the black bell over and examined it closely. Its material, refining techniques, and formation patterns all reflected a contemporary style. Li Ziming frowned. How strange. Guan Gongxiao, the dignified young master of the capital Immortal Dao, personally refines a Dharma artifact for nurturing and cultivation, yet instead of using Capital Guard, he chose Pure Essence. Exchanging a glance with Li Xiaowei, he said, "It seems the Capital Guard and Pure Essence share some connection. Interesting." The Pure Essence Dao had no pronounced strengths or weaknesses, yet the Capital Dao Bell was of even higher grade than the pit metal chain rings, nearly rivaling the Yang Radiant Red Sparrow banner. Li Ziming allowed Li Xiaowei to keep and use it himself, then turned his attention to the small mirror. The mirror was no larger than a palm and cast in an antique bronze hue, with 2 concentric rings etched with galloping beasts. Though its patterns were the most ornate among the 3 items, its quality was the lowest, and even its refining technique was unimpressive. Li Ziming glanced at it and said, "This Dharma artifact is the Copperwing Bright White Mirror. Its frame is forged from virtue-bestowed copper, while the mirror's surface is crafted from white crane glaze stone, a material of the true essence Dao. The artifact is not very old and was likely prepared specifically for our heavenly light." Li Xiaowei was not particularly interested in the item and planned to bestow it upon Ding Weizeng. He slipped it into his sleeve for the moment. At last, Li Ziming spoke. "That old foxy Hui, who knows what tricks he's playing? I had better quickly resolve the matters in Shanji Prefecture, and as for Mount Zioshi, I should pay a visit to Chengyan Gate." He mounted Heavenly Light and vanished into the great void, leaving Li Xiaowei in the hall, pacing in thought. Li Wen entered from below, his face still a little pale. He stepped into the hall and knelt, saying, "Master, the old elder sent someone to inquire about Insui. He said that Eldarin, our guest cultivator, has returned to the lake but has not spoken a word. He cannot be left in such disheartenment. Insui had been captured by the Golden Tang Gate, and that fellow Sidhu Mo had holed up. Unless someone from the Purple Mansion realm went personally, there was little Li Xiaowei could do. He could only send back words of concern from their true personages and have someone deliver the message first. Folding his hands behind his back, he rose and asked Li Wen, who was still in the hall. The old elder has been asking every single day, quite frequent. Has he been sending messages through the Jade Court? Li Wen himself, a Foundation Establishment realm cultivator serving in the Jade Court, understood the situation well and replied, "There is no record in the Jade Court, so the old elder must have sent a trusted aide, delivering the message to the Eastern Shore first." Li Xiaowei's suspicions were confirmed. The Eastern Shore was currently being overseen by Li Jiangxia, the son of Madame N, and it was clearly this young man's people who were running back and forth between the two sides. He merely tapped his brush and said, "He is certainly anxious." Li Wen lowered his head and pretended not to have heard. Li Xiaowei said, "Send a reply through the Jade Court and explain it clearly to the old elder. The Golden Tang Gate would not dare harm the family elder, nor would the Golden Feather sect. If he were to fall into the hands of the capital Immortal Dao a bit earlier, he might suffer some hardship, but his life would not be in danger." What is monumental for the Foundation Establishment realm is, in the eyes of the Purple Mansion realm cultivators, merely a word or a token. He can rest assured. He dismissed Li Wen with those words, then finally began tending to his injuries. Li Xiaowei had suffered primarily head injuries in this battle. 2 fractures ran through his frontal bone. Although the flesh and skin on the outside had healed, injuries involving bone and sinew were far harder to treat. The rest were wounds inflicted by water bindings when he had taken Guan Can's life, and those were healing quickly with medicine. Li Xiaowei cultivated in the hall for a little over 10 days, occasionally pausing to send replies, when Kong Guxi and the others unexpectedly returned. Sumian had kept his word, and Xuanmiao Temple had indeed put forth genuine effort. The injuries of the profound Peak Gate cultivators had greatly improved, the lightly wounded were nearly healed, and even the severely injured would recover within half a year. Only Kong Guxi's expression was sour. Li Xiaowei summoned Li Chenghui and questioned him closely, learning that Xuanmiao Temple had built a courtyard on the mountain where Changxi had passed away and even named it. As it faced Lake Xian directly, they called it Jehu Peak, symbolizing tribulations like a vast lake, now separated from the temple by this peak. Whether this development was good or bad was hard to say. The Kong family was in dire straits and still had to seek Xuanmiao Temple's aid for healing. Kong Guxi had naturally worn a fawning expression when he went, but he had fallen silent after returning to the wilderness. After Li Chenghui finished reporting, Li Xiaowei replied, "It's fine if he feels unsettled. Perhaps it's his way of showing loyalty. In any case, send someone to placate them. We'll still need Xuanmiao Temple's healing in the future, so don't let Profound Peak Gate's people become too resistant." After all, Xuanmiao Temple was of the Treasure Earth Dao lineage, which was highly skilled in healing arts. With such a resource to exploit, neither Li Ziming nor Li Xiaowei would let the opportunity slip easily. Li Chenghui answered and withdrew. Light and shadow shifted in the hall, weaving together as Li Xiaowei mended a few more patches of flesh. At last, Li Ziming tore open the great void and descended. He held a horned beast tightly bound by heavenly light. It was no larger than a calf, yet its aura was fierce and menacing. Though unable to move, its eyes still glared furiously. Li Ziming casually tossed the beast to the ground and smiled. "It's truly difficult to find a demon general without backing these days. I roamed along the rivers, all the way to Wu State, and questioned the local families. This demonic creature happened to be devouring humans when it crossed paths with me." He then drew a jade box from his sleeve and opened it casually, revealing a spirit herb as lustrous as fine jade. Striking the horned beast unconscious with practiced ease, Li Ziming continued, "Purple Smoke Gate sent the Burning Flame Pill manual, and the pill techniques within will benefit me greatly. There's also a Purple Mansion Realm pill recipe called True Profound Heart Cleansing Pill, said to be capable of purging karmic tribulations. This beast belongs to the Pure Essence Dao, making it a perfect match. Here is the Jade Ganoderma Azure Orchid gifted by the Shen family. 1 furnace yields 6 pills, so it'll be enough for all of you." Chapter 1108, The Sword Gate's Retrieval, II. It was the first time Li Xiaowei had heard the name of a Purple Mansion Realm pill. As he pondered, Li Ziming shook his head and said, "This medicine can save a life for Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators, but it's merely a wound-healing pill for the Purple Mansion Realm cultivators. It's an ordinary commodity among them. If it were anything too precious, they would never have offered it to our household. An ordinary alchemist would need 3 to 5 months to refine a batch of healing pills made with treasured panaceas. But Li Ziming now wielded a divine ability, and many ordinary pills no longer required a pill furnace at all. Refining them took only 3 to 5 days. He continued, "With my current abilities, I can refine any pill below the Purple Mansion realm through divine ability alone." The true profound heart-cleansing pill isn't too difficult. I'll have someone deliver it to you in a few days. No matter what, the true profound heart-cleansing pill was a pill capable of healing Purple Mansion realm cultivators. Purple Smoke Gate's gift was far from light. Li Ziming sighed. Waiting for a demonic creature to reach Foundation Establishment realm takes far too long, and they're not something you can capture whenever you please. No wonder the Dao lineages in Jiangnan are so fond of human pills. As the two continued their discussion, Li Chenghui returned from outside the hall, entering with a trace of urgency. His expression looked slightly awkward, and it was only when he came close that he said quietly, "Family head, Taoist master. People from the Sword Gate have arrived. They say they're here to reclaim something from Profound Peak Gate." Sword Gate, Wanyu. That was a name he had never expected to hear. Li Xiaowei was genuinely taken aback and asked, "Who came, and what exactly are they asking for?" Li Chenghui shook his head and continued, "I've already arranged for them to be led to the side hall, and I've summoned Kong Guxi and the others as well. Bring them here." Li Ziming spoke, and Li Chenghui immediately withdrew. Li Xiaowei rose from the main seat and moved to the side. The Sword Gate envoys soon entered the hall, led by the sword cultivator Cheng Jinju. A long sword was strapped to his back, his gaze sharp and piercing. He first saluted Li Ziming, then cupped his hands and said, "Greetings, Taoist master. My family's Taoist master has spoken of you often since our parting at Sword Peak, and asked me to convey his regards first. No need for formalities." Li Ziming had a good impression of Ling Mei after a brief conversation with him. The man was not one of those rigid traditionalists Sword Gate was known for, and suited his taste. Cheng Jinju wasted no time on pleasantries. After inquiring briefly about their injuries, he spoke directly. "I have come here for one matter. Senior Changxi once borrowed the territory known as Wind-Listening White Stone Mountain from our sect, promising that it would be returned upon his death, along with the southern shore of Lake Xian and the 9 eastern towns of Shanji Prefecture. Now it is time for its return." At those words, the hall fell utterly silent. Although Wanyu's Sword Gate was renowned as a righteous sect, Cheng Jinju's words left even Li Xiaowei and Li Ziming speechless. A brief silence settled over the hall. The reason was simple. There had been no prior word of such a matter, not even the slightest hint from Changxi or Kong Guxi. It was only the Wanyu Sword Gate's reputation that kept them hesitant. Had it been anyone else, they would have assumed it was an opportunistic attempt to strike while the iron was hot and kick them while they were down. After a clear pause, Li Ziming finally spoke, "Bring Kong Guxi here." After several seconds, the middle-aged man hurried into the hall, saluted Li Ziming and the others, and then noticed Cheng Jinju. Kong Guxi's face betrayed no sign of turmoil, though his manner carried a hint of flattery as he said, "Greetings, Taoist Cheng." By now, Cheng Jinju's face showed some confusion. He cast a probing glance at Kong Guxi and said, "Greetings, Gate Master." Li Xiaowei watched with growing suspicion and said with a faint smile, "Gate Master Kong, it seems this is an old matter concerning Profound Peak Gate. The Cheng family is here to reclaim what was theirs." Kong Guxi was utterly confused. One glance around the hall had led him to assume the Li family was simply planning to hand Shanji Prefecture over to Wanyu, and he had only come to hear the outcome. But the sudden turn of events left his heart uneasy. Cheng Jinju had no choice but to repeat himself, and Kong Guxi's pupils widened as he listened. Cheng Jinju added, "Wind-Listening White Stone Mountain is a spirit artifact our Dao had acquired from Daoxuan. It is no ordinary thing. The sect now wishes to make use of it, so I was sent to inquire." A spirit artifact. Kong Guxi's heart sank into despair, and he cursed inwardly, Fine. Everyone wants to trample us while we're down, but you, Wanyu, are a lofty and exalted Green Pine Supreme Yang Dao lineage. Why must you throw stones at us too? If you want territory, take it. Where would my sect even find a spirit artifact to give you?" But the situation was stronger than he was. Even at Profound Peak Gate's height, the Kong family had never dared show defiance to Wanyu. Sweat streamed down his face as he cast a pleading look at Li Xiaowei. Cheng Jinju was not slow to notice something was amiss and asked, "Does Gate Master truly not know of this matter?" "What does it matter if I know or not? If a Taoist master says it exists, then it exists." Seeing the Li family remain silent, Kong Guxi could only stammer, Perhaps there was such a matter." And this territory was indeed meant to be ceded to the Sword Gate. Cheng Jinju's expression shifted, and he spoke again, "Gate Master Kong, where is the spirit artifact?" The topic had reached a point where Li Ziming had no choice but to speak. Matters involving spirit artifacts are no small affair. The agreed-upon territory can be handed over to the Sword Gate first. As for Wind-Listening White Stone Mountain, I have yet to see it. Let us put that aside for now. Profound Peak Gate can cede a few more towns as payment to continue leasing the spirit artifact. If it is truly urgent for your gate to reclaim it, I will consult carefully with Senior Ling Mei. Regardless of Wanyu's intentions, or whether this matter was true or not, having someone take over part of Shanji Prefecture was ultimately beneficial. Li Ziming decided to settle that point first. Cheng Jinju had no standing to negotiate directly with him, but fortunately, his own Taoist master had already prepared instructions. He replied solemnly, "Since Taoist master has spoken, this matter will be handled under the arrangements of Moongaze Lake. Our sword gate understands that Profound Peak Gate is at a critical juncture. Wind-listening White Stone Mountain may well be vital to your gate. Our lineage is not one to kick others while they're down, and our Taoist master made it clear long ago that if it concerns Profound Peak Gate's survival, retrieving it is not an absolute necessity." Li Xiaowei, however, recalled something and asked, "Your gate may dispatch people to take over Shanji Prefecture, but Lake Xian is currently in the hands of Xuanmiao Temple. To cede the southern shore, you'll need to consult with Taoist Master Sumian." Cheng Jinju shook his head calmly and smiled. "Family head, our Taoist master sent a letter there just yesterday. Xuanmiao has already handed it over. Taoist Master Sumian even came to Sword Peak personally to offer an apology, but as our Taoist master was not at the peak, he asked Taoist Master Qi to return first." At those words, the true stature of Wanyu Sword Gate was laid bare, yet both Kong Guxi and Cheng Jinju seemed to take it as a matter of course. Li Ziming's eyes narrowed as clarity dawned in his heart. Is it because Ling Mei's strength is so formidable and his sword art so extraordinary, or is it that the status of the Green Pine Dao lineage is even more exalted than we imagined? In Yue State, the Dao lineages of the so-called three sects and the 10 or 7 gates rise and fall with time, yet the 6 Dao lineages of Changming Hall have remained unbroken to this day. Could that truly be mere coincidence? Chapter 1109, The Profound Peak Mountain Gate I. A fleeting thought crossed Li Ziming's mind, stirring doubt. If that is the case, then the kinship between the 2 sects and the 4 gates might be far closer than I had imagined. If Jiangnin's Dao lineage most likely originated from Green Pine, what exactly does that signify? When I broke through to the Purple Mansion realm, there were formal congratulations to be received and visits to the 3 families to be made. Were these matters truly rules and restraints born of Jiangnin's customs, or were they a unique expression of Jiangnin's power? He pondered briefly and gave a small nod. Thus, Shanji Prefecture, the core territory of Profound Peak Gate, was ceded to the east. Kong Guxi barely had the time to feel relieved that Li Ziming had agreed. Although Cheng Jinju still harbored doubts, it was enough to conclude the internal arrangements. It was not his place to speak too much before a Taoist master, so he replied, "This spirit artifact was borrowed when the former gate master, Kong Tingyun, accompanied the Taoist master. The current master is unaware of the details, so perhaps something about it has not yet been accounted for." Li Xiaowei caught the mention of Kong Tingyun's name and raised his brows. "I wonder what sort of marvel this spirit artifact possesses." Cheng Jinju paused to think before answering. "I have never seen the artifact's true form myself, but I have heard that its body rests beneath a mountain as an adornment within the Daoxuan Grotto heaven. When it manifests in its original form, it is as vast as a mountain and pure white and radiant. It can awaken the spirit, enlighten the mind, and bring clarity and calm." Li Xiaowei noted the information and exchanged a glance with Li Chenghui, then let the topic go and asked, "I once discussed formations with Taoist Master Ling Mei. Do you have any news regarding that matter?" Several Purple Mansion realm cultivators Li Ziming had visited mentioned the same matter, so Cheng Jinju was prepared and replied, "The Taoist master has already written to an old friend in the sea, but the reply stated that the friend is in seclusion and will not be available in the coming years." He paused briefly. After Li Xiaowei dismissed Kong Guxi, Cheng Jinju continued, "There is also Taoist Master Tinglin of the Purple Smoke Dao lineage. They excel at formations. Though not capable of personally laying them, they can adapt to local conditions, shift and modify them, and relocate an already established Purple Mansion realm grand formation. Its power would change, but it would still remain of Purple Mansion realm." The moment these words left his lips, everyone immediately understood what he meant. He is referring to the Profound Peak Mountain Gate. Li Ziming signaled that he understood, and Cheng Jinju took his leave. After he exited the hall, Li Ziming said, "Mingwang, Wanyu does not seem to be lying about this. I have met Li Mei. Although his views oppose those of Wanyu's elders and he harbors thoughts of reform and renewal, he does not strike me as someone who would resort to such means." Li Xiaowei responded, "This matter is of little concern to our family, but it should still be clarified as soon as possible. Whether it is true or not, so long as the Sword Gate does not ultimately place the blame on us, that will suffice. After all, the Li family could not afford to compensate anyone with a spirit artifact at the moment." Li Ziming exhaled and said, "That old man Chengxi refuses to speak plainly even beyond his death. I shall make a trip to Profound Peak Gate. From the sound of it, this spirit artifact is of earth virtue and might be assisting Kong Tingyun in her breakthrough." Li Xiaowei's earlier mention of Kong Tingyun had indeed pointed toward this possibility. Since Li Ziming had understood, he nodded in farewell, watching as Li Ziming stepped into the heavenly light and tore through the great void. Zhaijing Mountain. The pill furnace before Li Ziming trembled slightly as pure essence rose upward. The furnace mouth quivered, and 6 dusky yellow pills burst forth. He raised his hand to catch them. Each true profound heart-cleansing pill was the size of a longan, with no distinct patterns, and a delicate fragrance wafted through the air. Li Ziming produced a jade bottle and stored them inside. Petals rained down with the wind on Zhaijing Mountain, scattering like white brilliance across the ground. He admired the sight briefly before he vanished to appear to the south. The one small pond in a hollow on Zhaijing Mountain had transformed into a mouth of the Earth Fiend spring. Black-red Earth Fiend force surged upward, and purple flames rippled within it, bound by white formation lines around the pool, gathering like water within its basin. Li Ziming lifted his hand gently. Splash. The pool suddenly stirred, its surface of condensed purple fiendfire rippling violently. A palm-sized bottle shot out from within. The bottle was a deep crimson purple and etched with glassy patterns like searing flames. It landed in Li Ziming's hand, and he immediately sensed its nature. This bottle was refined by the bright yang purple fire and has absorbed radiant fire. It is nearing saturation. This pool had been born alongside Li Ziming's Dao attainment, forming a Earth Fiend fire vein dominated by bright yang fire, radiant fire, and Earth Fiend. Though potent, it was too fierce for alchemy. The profound patterned bottle could absorb the bright yang and radiant fires from the fire vein and refine them. Every half a year, Li Ziming would retrieve it for use. Without bothering to check how much flame the bottle held, he circulated the valley wind leading fire technique along with the bright yang divine ability. It took only a brief moment to completely refine the flames inside. Upon inspection, their might was already impressive by Foundation Establishment realm standards. What a most peculiar Dharma artifact, muttered Li Ziming. To this day, Li Ziming could not discern which Dao lineage this artifact belonged to. Even with his refinement using bright yang and radiant fire, it had yet to reach its limit, leaving much room for further tempering. I wonder if it can be forged into a spirit embryo. It would be a shame to waste it. For now, I will continue refining it and use something else in its place. Things were far from idle at Moongaze Lake while Li Xiaowei and the others held their posts in the wilderness. Li Zhongqian had mobilized all available manpower to construct a high platform beside Chengqing Gate, one of the 6 surrounding the lake. This platform was not without purpose. It was the great refining platform described in the divine technique of Pavilion View, refining within fire. Li Ziming had inspected it earlier and found it more than halfway complete. With matters concluded here, I'll head to Profound Peak Gate first, then make a trip to Chengyan Gate. It's a close neighbor after all, and after delaying this long, I might as well inquire about Mount Zioshi, thought Li Ziming. He tossed the profound patterned bottle back into the pool with a casual motion, then slipped into the great void and sped through it without delay, emerging in the wilderness. Li Xiaowei was not in the hall. Instead, Li Chenghui and Kong Guxi were in the midst of a discussion. Li Ziming tossed the pills into Li Chenghui's hands, seized Kong Guxi by the collar, and departed. Kong Guxi was badly startled, but fortunately he had once been brought into the great void by Changxi. He steadied himself amidst the heavenly light and bowed, Taoist master. Before he could finish, the rest of his words were stifled by a single nod from Li Ziming. Moments later, they reappeared in the mortal realm, on Profound Peak Gate in Shanji Prefecture. The night was deep, and the white radiance above Profound Peak Gate still shimmered in the sky. The outline of the peaks was faintly visible, yet unlike its once bustling state, it now resembled a dead mountain with no trace of flight light rising or falling. Bitterness filled Kong Guxi as Li Ziming commanded, "Open the formation." Yes, he removed the command token from his waist and directed it toward the formation, forming seals with his hands as brown-yellow radiance flared. After a moment, the grand formation before them split open, revealing a gateway beyond, a jade mountain gate and bright yellow lanterns in the distance. Chapter 11:10, The Profound Peak Mountain Gate II. Kong Guxi felt the ground beneath his feet grow lighter as the portal-like opening appeared. Dark mountain ranges undulated unevenly below him, shimmering with scattered light. He glimpsed 2 or 3 figures darting about here and there, their flight lights streaking across the darkness like meteors. It was a sight he had seen countless times before, and they were already above his sect's mountain gate. Li Ziming's back loomed before him as the newly ascended Taoist master stared intently at the immortal pavilions below, a sight that sent a chill of dread crawling up Kong Guxi's spine. He hunched his shoulders and tucked his hands into his sleeves, following Li Ziming as they flew a circuit around the gate. Soon he heard the Taoist master's words of praise. "Your gate has deep reserves and excels at shifting mountains and altering terrain. Spiritual energy thrives in every corner of this land with many unique spirit mountains. 5 of the 12 essences are complete, and of the 5 virtues, 8 are present with 3 of them of the earth virtue. Remarkable. Truly remarkable." Though Profound Peak Gate might not match other immortal sects in certain respects, its spirit mountains were second to none. Changxi had labored diligently for centuries, shifting mountains into Profound Peak Gate like a tireless mole preparing for winter, and the result was a mountain gate that was undeniably alluring. No wonder Yi Hui covets this mountain gate so deeply. His Bai'ai capital Immortal Dao was only recently established. If he were to obtain this mountain gate, it would save him centuries of effort. Li Ziming wandered the grounds for a while and found the disciples pitifully few. Only the main hall held a handful of figures, among them his junior Li Jianglong, who was studying a jade slip intently beside a pile of books taller than himself. Li Ziming nodded faintly and made no move to meet him. He continued his circuit, seeing many kinds of secret realms along the way, yet there was not a single spirit artifact. There was not even anything remotely connected to the wind-listening white stone mountain. He only stopped before Profound Peak Gate's treasure vault, pausing briefly with his hands clasped behind his back as he turned to speak. Gate Master, is there truly no wind-listening white stone mountain inside? Kong Guxi already understood his intent and fell to his knees. I have never known of any wind-listening white stone mountain. If I am hiding even the smallest thing, may I die instantly and vanish from the Tao. Li Ziming had not truly believed that Taoist Master Chengxi would leave such a spirit artifact in the vault. If so, there would be no reason to hide it from him. Thus, he said again, take me to the seclusion locations. Kong Guxi visibly turned pale, bowed deeply, and answered in a quiet voice, may I ask, which person does the Taoist Master wish to see? Li Ziming replied casually, Kong Tingyun. Kong Guxi only nodded and led him swiftly through the mountains, producing the command token to unravel formation wards. They twisted through winding paths, descended beneath a spirit mountain, broke through another formation, and finally came upon a cave dwelling. When they reached a stone platform within the cave dwelling, Kong Guxi used the command token to activate the formation. Only then did a tightly sealed stone door emerge upon the cave wall. Without saying a word, Kong Guxi collapsed to his knees with a thud, curling into a trembling ball. Li Ziming naturally understood his meaning. If he insisted on seeking the wind-listening white stone mountain, the sealed chamber would have to be opened, and once the stone door was breached, Kong Tingyun would almost certainly die. He did not enter. Instead, he paused in thought, puzzled. The Cheng family said that once the wind-listening white stone mountain is activated, it grows as large as a mountain. It is unlikely such a thing could be hidden within this small sealed chamber, and even if it could, it would be easy for me to detect. He walked out as Kong Guxi repeatedly kowtowed behind him. Even after leaving the secluded cave dwelling, Li Ziming remained utterly perplexed. It was clear that the wind-listening white stone mountain could not be found within Profound Peak Gate. Taoist Master Chengxi must have used some unknown means and prepared contingencies for the spirit artifact. Since he had chosen not to reveal them to Li Ziming, finding it now would be exceedingly difficult. He promised the Sword Gate the southern shore of Lake Xian and the eastern part of Shanji Prefecture. It could not be more obvious that this was Chengxi's arrangement for after his passing. If that is the case, then wherever the wind-listening white stone mountain is left, the old man must have calculated it carefully. Li Ziming could only leave with regret, though he kept the matter in mind. Ling Mei also specifically instructed that there is no urgency to this matter. That old fox Chengxi lived for over 400 years, so there is no way he would pin all his hopes on me alone. I should wait and see how things develop. Li Ziming still held the secret of the devil fetus that Sumian acquired from Chengxi, and such matters would require careful investigation. Acting rashly could very well backfire. No matter how mild-mannered Sumian appears now, he is still an old Purple Mansion realm cultivator. If cornered, the threat he poses would be no less than that of Yi Hui. Kong Guxi was still shaken and lost in thought as he followed Li Ziming down the mountain. Li Ziming set him down at the edge of the wilderness and said, send a few people back to search again. If this spirit artifact remains missing, you will have a hard time explaining yourself to Wan Yu. Kong Guxi could only nod obediently. His appearance mirrored his state of mind. His hair had rapidly turned gray in just over a month. Once he had still looked somewhat youthful, but now he bore the full visage of a middle-aged man on the cusp of becoming elderly. Li Ziming gave him another look and was struck by how much he resembled Li Xuanxuan during those years when his inner demons had taken root. Though they were two entirely different people, their expressions had become eerily alike. Every family has its own troubles, and in hardship none are spared, thought Li Ziming. He withdrew his gaze and slipped into the Great Void, heading northward. As he entered the territory of Chengshui Marsh, the Great Void grew noticeably rugged, prompting Li Ziming to quietly praise what remarkable fortune. The finest land in all of Zhangbei, Chengshui Marsh, has been swallowed up by him alone. Li Ziming tore open the void and returned to the mortal realm, catching sight of a vast expanse of shimmering marsh waters from afar. From above, countless dark water cypresses stood tall within it, their leaves rustling softly in the passing breeze. Chengshui Marsh. A complex look flickered in Li Ziming's eyes. This was one of the most renowned great marshes, beneath which countless corpses of cultivators from both north and south lay buried. He swept the area with his spiritual sense and thought, Changshui Marsh was once a land of converging water, yet the wood qi here is so abundant that even after being flooded by converging waters, so many water cypresses have still grown. Compared to Moongaze Lake, it is closer in nature to a marshland, and perhaps in another 100 years, it will become a mansion water-treasured land. All things in the world were in constant flux, and nothing remained unchanged. Moongaze Lake, with its deeper water level, belonged to the Pit Water Dao and had long since stabilized. Otherwise, the remnants of Lingyu Gate would not have chosen that location in the past. The foreshores surrounding Moongaze Lake were closer in nature to mansion water marshlands, with water levels similar to Changshui Marsh, though their spiritual energy was far inferior. Riding a beam of light through the skies, Li Ziming descended above the bustling market built upon Changshui Marsh. The Li family had maintained a foothold in Changshui Marsh as well. Years ago, when his junior Li Qian was beginning Qi cultivation realm, the transformative spiritual qi of the 5 phases required for her training had been harvested from Changshui Marsh. A shop in the market had served as a cover for the operation, and the family still maintained people here to this day. If I recall correctly, the He family oversees this site. Forming a hand seal, Li Ziming slipped through the formation of the market atop the marsh as if it were nothing, passing through the great void and emerging within the market itself. After all, not even Chengyan Gate, much less the Golden Feather sect, would be extravagant enough to protect a mere market with a purple mansion realm grand formation. Nearly 90% of market towns in Jiangnan were unfortified against cultivators of the purple mansion. Gazing below, Li Ziming saw a teeming sea of people as the streets bustled with life. With a sweep of his spiritual sense, he clearly caught every bit of the surrounding chatter. Minghui, the merciful one of Lotus Temple, has brought the temple's cultivators here, to Changshui Marsh, to engage in a Dao debate with Taoist Master Chengyun. Chapter 11:11, Fish Bait I, Minghui, sounds so familiar. The name stirred something in Li Ziming's memory. After all, anything even slightly related to the Purple Mansion realm was hard to forget once heard. Realization dawned on him, so it's from Murongzia's side. When Murongzia had journeyed south in pursuit of Dao attainment in the past, he had avoided the Sword Gate Ziyuqi path, likely fearing it would provoke the Spirit Pine Taoist master. Nor had he dared to take the profound Peak Purple Smoke path, since he was wary of being slain by Taoist master Zaipai. Instead, he had chosen the Azure Pond path, which led straight to Li Ziming's own territory after crossing the river. At that time, Murongzia had clashed briefly with his family. Li Tongya had even intervened, only to be stopped by a monk from Lotus Temple named Minghui. It was very likely the very same figure spoken of in rumors. There was conflict between us back then, and my family already has plenty of enmity with Buddhist cultivators. It is best not to meet at all. He was about to step into the great void when a figure rose into the air above the marketplace. It was an elderly man with white hair and black robes, whose appearance did little to inspire confidence. Yet his expression remained respectfully composed as he approached and bowed. "By order of my family's ancestor, I have been waiting here for you, Taoist master. He has been at Yebai Pavilion for quite some time, and requests that you follow me there." Li Ziming glanced at him, a hint of curiosity flickering in his heart. For a mere foundation establishment realm cultivator to perceive my presence. It must be Chang Yun's doing. What marvelous means did he use to let this man see me? I have never heard that Taoist master Chang Yun possessed divination arts, and yet he knew I was coming. Even if he could not predict a purple mansion realm cultivator's whereabouts, to divine my visit and its relation to him shows an astonishing mastery. He withdrew his gaze, letting it rest briefly on the black-robed elder as he asked, "Fellow Taoist Chang Yun's divination is remarkable indeed. He already knew I would be coming to visit." The old man still looked slightly nervous and hurried to reply, "Taoist master, my family's ancestor only sent word that a certain Taoist master would visit today. He did not say who it would be." That explanation seemed far more reasonable. Since Chang Yun had already sent someone, Li Ziming saw no reason to go and come again, so he simply said, "Lead the way." The black-robed elder bowed at once and began leading the way. Li Ziming glanced at him, the heavenly light between his brows flickering slightly, and spoke as if in passing, "I see that Changshui Marsh is rich in spiritual energy and abundant in spirit items. It is an excellent place for nurturing talent. Surely many notable figures have emerged here in recent years." Since a Taoist master had spoken, the elder dared not be careless and quickly replied, "Taoist master, several esteemed families have risen in Jiangbei in recent years, and many rogue cultivators have achieved immortal foundation and dispersed north and south. Moreover, quite a few Dao lineages from the northern regions have sent people here to Changshui Marsh to harvest its vital energy." Li Ziming asked, "Since the spiritual energy here is so abundant and talents are flourishing, I suppose the blood qi methods of the Eastern Sea are no longer in use?" The old man quickly nodded in reply. "Exactly. Our gate master and the Taoist master had long since given the order. The era of the Eastern Sea is over. Our gate now stands as a proper orthodox gate." Those who cultivate blood qi have been sent to garrison the Eastern Sea, and those who once practiced a few devil techniques have all restrained themselves. Our disciples now go out regularly to hunt demonic creatures and suppress evil, cleansing Changshui Marsh and its surroundings. Devil cultivators are now almost non-existent. Nowadays, common folk are migrating here in droves, and we have gained a name even in Jiangbei. Our Chengyan Gate is the most renowned for eliminating evil and upholding the Tao. A flattering smile spread across the elder's face as he continued, Taoist master, you may ask anyone here, the rogue cultivators, family cultivators, commoners, or disciples. All will tell you that Chengyan Gate is the foremost righteous gate in Jiangbei. Li Ziming felt a tangle of emotions as he listened. For this man to speak with such certainty before him, Chengyan Gate's conduct was likely indeed as clean as he claimed. The rogue cultivators and commoners might not know, but Chengyan Gate had once been nothing more than a gathering of devil cultivators. Yet after a few decades and a new generation of disciples, native Jiangbei geniuses trained from Qi cultivation realm onward, their power had stabilized, and the sect had transformed into an orthodox Taoist force. If another 50 years pass, who will remember that Chengyan Gate's founders were devil cultivators who committed every evil and feasted on human flesh? Their disciples and descendants, grandsons of their bloodline, will stand in glory, eliminating evil and upholding the Tao, and they will not remember what once was. And Chengyan Gate, a gate that rids the world of evil, will then be beyond reproach. His gaze grew darker. Who will remember the sins of those ancestors who rose to power through devil techniques? Who will care? Are the good deeds of their descendants not good deeds? Yet those good deeds are built upon the capital gained by their forebears' slaughter and cannibalism. No matter how he pondered it, Li Ziming understood that with Zhang Kai's intervention, Chengyan Gate would almost certainly become the foremost righteous sect in Jiangbei, rivaling Sword Gate and Hangzhou Dao Gate. The stories of devil cultivators, the killings, and the blood-refining atrocities would all be buried beneath the endless piles of corpses they themselves had slain. These devil cultivator elders who spent a lifetime devouring humans will, after centuries of breathing spiritual qi atop the peaks, change to become Taoist elders of the righteous path. Who will care? The grateful commoners under their rule, the rogue cultivators they save. Even the descendants of Chengyan Gate themselves will not remember. The affairs of the world are a murky blend of purity and filth beyond reckoning. Nothing captures it better than this. Yebai Mountain. Yebai Mountain was the highest point of Changshui Marsh, which had once served as the imperial mausoleum of Ning State. The mountain stood at the very heart of the tomb grounds. Chengyan Gate had occupied the mountain and built a pavilion atop the peak, naming it Yebai Pavilion after the mountain itself. Though called a pavilion, the structure was sprawled across a vast area, winding and turning upon itself. The main hall was enormous. A plain-looking young man sat within, dressed in a long robe of white feathers and black mystic patterns. He had a light-collared white soft armor beneath, a blade at his waist, and a jade gourd in hand. Across the table from him sat a kindly-faced, slightly plump monk in a brown-yellow robe. Studying a jade cup in his hands, he smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist Chang Yun, if my calculations are correct, that Taoist friend of yours will arrive here within the next 2 hours." Taoist master Chang Yun's gaze lingered on the jade flask in his hand. After a few seconds, he seemed to sense something and finally said, "Fellow Taoist Minghui, your divination is truly impressive." Monk Minghui chuckled softly. "Though this old monk has not yet ascended to the Maha seat, I have not come away empty-handed. My non-retrogression ground is certified beneath the lotus throne of Maha's Buddhist land, and there is still a place reserved above. With patience and perseverance, Maha is within reach." Taoist master Chang Yun paused briefly before replying, "Fellow Taoist, your fortune is truly remarkable. How many ordinary monks could ever attain such a destiny? You are both the Lotus Temple's chief disciple and the envoy to the south. Back when the Yue cultivating sect advanced northward and Shang Yuan made his move, Maha Jinlian even risked his own reputation and sacrificed the life of another merciful one to shield the way, all to secure you the title of a monk who brings peace amidst turmoil. Naturally, the Maha seat is within reach." Minghui smiled. "That is because my master has now completed his 8th lifetime of cultivation and become an 8th-generation Maha. The way of virtue flourishes, and with a seat vacant in the Buddhist land, I now have this opportunity. Look at Master Monk Xuewang of the North-South dispute. The way of emptiness held no seat for him, yet he stubbornly refused to become a merciful one. It was only after slaughtering all the Azure Pond sect cultivators at Mount Bianyan that he attained non-retrogression, and even then he sits only beneath the Golden Lotus, the same seat as mine." The monk chuckled and said, "In the end, all of this is thanks to the favor my Maha has shown me." Taoist master Chang Yun felt some disdain in his heart. He had little fondness for the monk, but Minghui was backed by Jinlian, an 8th-generation Maha, and he himself was destined for a Maha seat. Chang Yun could not afford to be dismissive. He responded with a polite smile just as a voice sounded from outside the hall. Taoist master, please. Chapter 11:12, Fishbait II. The brows of both men rose as someone entered the hall. The young man was dressed in a Taoist robe of white fabric embroidered with golden patterns. His features were upright, carrying a gentle and steady air, and a faint heavenly light flickered between his brows. Taoist master Cheng Yun froze for a moment, sensing the bright yang divine ability radiating from him, and cautiously asked, "Fellow Taoist Jiajing." Li Ziming cupped his hands in return and smiled. "Greetings, Taoist master Cheng Yun." Cheng Yun immediately rose from the main seat, smiling as he stepped down. "That fellow Zhang Qian told me you would be paying a visit. I have been waiting and waiting, and at last you have arrived." Zhang Qian not only shared a karmic connection with Li Xuanfeng, but had also treated the Li family with considerable respect, especially when they attained the Purple Mansion realm. Li Ziming, naturally courteous in return, smiled as well. Cheng Yun gestured for him to sit at the side table, then extended a hand toward Minghui. "This is Taoist Master Jiajing of the Li family of Moongaze." Minghui merely lifted his head, casting a lazy glance before lounging back in his seat. From Li Ziming's aura, it was clear he had only recently entered the Purple Mansion realm, hardly worth much respect. He thought to himself, "Oh, some immortal family, Moongaze Li, Moongaze Li." The monk's pupils dilated sharply. Cheng Yun turned toward Li Ziming to introduce. "This is Minghui, the merciful one of Lotus Temple. He has attained non-retrogression on the way of virtue, sits beneath the golden lotus, and is expected to become a monk." Though the way of virtue had little direct enmity with the Li family among the 7 ways of Buddhism, Li Ziming still felt no goodwill toward the northern Buddhist cultivators. He doubted the monk would show him any either, so he maintained only a veneer of politeness. Across from him, Minghui fought the urge to turn and flee. The terror churning inside him was beyond words, cold dread shooting up to the very bones of his brow as he thought, "Damn it all, the benevolent, revered one. It's that Li family." Years ago, Minghui had gone to Moongaze Lake for a mere divination, and nearly calculated himself to death. He had sacrificed his most precious Dharma artifact just to escape, and even caused Jinlian to suffer repercussions. Minghui believed that no one in the world understood the truth of that incident better than he did. Jinlian himself had no memory of it, but the merest vague account from Minghui had left him horrified. Minghui, however, had seen it with his own eyes, how Jinlian, the Maha of 7 lifetimes, had been rendered as fragile as a mere mortal in the hands of that man. That incident had not only left Minghui with an unshakable shadow, but had also inflicted trauma on Jinlian, severely disrupting his subsequent plans and ultimately causing Minghui's attempt to ascend to Maha to end in failure. There were only 2 paths for a monk who had attained the 7 Dharma forms to advance further, obediently becoming a merciful one, or taking a great leap to ascend directly to Maha. The former was already exceedingly difficult. One might have a slim chance by currying favor with a Maha and first proving oneself as a merciful one beneath the lowest sattva throne, then spending the rest of one's time groveling for favor, inching one's way upward through non-retrogression and hoping to secure a vacant seat. The latter path was even more difficult and nearly heaven-defying. One needed the blessing of profound karmic fortune, significant contributions to the Dharma, and most importantly, a seat within one's own pure land along with the support of an existing Maha. Only then could the road to Maha be attempted. Jinlian's injury had affected both his soul and divine abilities, which had shaken the foundation of the Maha seat itself. Fortunately, Minghui's foundation was deep, and Jinlian had given him full support from within the Pure Land. Thus he had settled for second best, first attaining the title of Merciful One beneath the highest Golden Lotus throne. Without this contingency, Minghui's preparations would have been wasted, and he would have lost centuries of cultivation time in vain. Minghui and Jinlian had long reached a tacit agreement to never dwell on that incident. Minghui had even faintly sensed that Jinlian's wholehearted support carried an intention to pull him into the same camp. Now standing before Li Ziming, he dared neither be too friendly nor too hostile. Li Ziming had been prepared for a cold reception, but to his surprise, the monk straightened in his seat and offered a warm, earnest smile. "So it is Taoist Master Jiajing. This humble monk is Minghui. I have long admired you." Li Ziming raised a brow in mild surprise, and Minghui quickly continued, "I was not in the north in my early years, but I once traveled south and crossed paths with the head of your esteemed family several times. I was deeply moved by his brilliance and admired him greatly." Li Ziming's expression turned slightly odd, while Cheng Yun found the words amusing and explained, "This merciful one's way of virtue gained great benefit after the fall of the way of wrath back then." The Buddhist land expanded, though it came into some conflict with the way of emptiness, but that was part of the north-south disputes of that time. Li Ziming understood now that this one had been an enemy of the way of wrath and the way of emptiness. Realization dawned on him, although most Buddhist cultivators are vile trash, this one is clearly cut from a different cloth. Moreover, with the potential for Maha, no wonder Cheng Yun is willing to meet him. He nodded slightly, and Minghui smiled. I had already calculated that a fellow Taoist would visit Taoist Chang Yun today, though he was still half in doubt. Taoist Master Chang Yun nodded. He clearly had no desire to bring up the matters he had discussed with Minghui earlier and quickly interrupted. It seems I underestimated the Merciful One's skill in divination. Fellow Taoist, may I ask what matter brings you here today? Li Ziming naturally wanted to inquire about the matter of Mount Zai Oshi, but he feared Minghui might not know and would learn of it unnecessarily, so he said instead, "It concerns the Tao lineage of Brahma Cloud Cave." Minghui let out a hearty laugh beside them, as if to bolster his own courage, and said, "So it's about Mount Zai Oshi after all." Chang Yun smiled at that, poured some tea, and explained, "When it comes to the matter of Mount Zai Oshi, all who witnessed it have a share. The benefits lie within the formation. Since Zhejiang now holds the Tao lineage of Floating Cloud Cave, naturally he is entitled to a share as well. Mount Zai Oshi was conquered by the way of emptiness, and its fall was partly due to the Yue cultivating sect's retreat and partly due to our own indulgence. Thus, even the northern Buddhist cultivators are aware of the situation." Clarity began to dawn in Li Ziming's heart as he asked, "In that case, how is the formation to be opened?" Mount Zai Oshi is now a barren land, its inheritors scattered, and we do not wish for that Tao lineage to be rebuilt. Thus, the Miffin Three sects came into being, and the key to opening the formation lies within them. Chang Yun sipped his tea before continuing. Mount Zai Oshi's Miffin once contained 5 Tao lineages. 3 of them form today's Miffin Three sects: Floating Cloud Body, Hurricane Ghost Yin, and Empty Response Dispersion. If the remaining 2 can be gathered, the treasures of Mount Zai Oshi can be stirred. Li Ziming pondered for a moment, then said pointedly, "Does that mean many of Mount Zai Oshi's Tao lineages have been scattered elsewhere?" "Exactly." Chang Yun smiled casually, though his words sent a chill down one's spine. "Zhejiang, your guess is correct. The Miffin Three sects are nothing more than bait. The remaining 2 Tao lineages of Mount Zai Oshi have scattered across the land. Their whereabouts are unknown, though they are likely somewhere in the Eastern Sea. As long as these 3 sects maintain their reputation in Jiangbei and carry the name of Mount Zai Oshi's Miffin, any descendants who have inherited those Tao lineages and attained fruition will inevitably return to seek them out. Whether it is to complete the Tao lineage, to search for kin out of desperation, or simply to find a background to attach themselves to, no matter whether emotionally and logically they will come back to meet them. This is bait cast into the river. We need only wait for them to bite." Chapter 11:13 Detailed Explanation. I see. Chang Yun was like a man fishing by the riverbank. He knew the situation better than anyone. Li Ziming understood that these Purple Mansion realm cultivators would only reveal what was asked, nothing more. If there was anything he failed to consider, then he simply wasn't qualified to claim a share. So he said, "The Hurricane Ghost Yin Tao lineage of Wenhu has fallen into my hands. Fellow Taoist raised that Ping Wangzi to prepare for opening the formation. I suppose I should cultivate someone of my own as well." Chang Yun burst into laughter. "That's an easy matter. The Wenhu in your hands once searched for the Miffin Tao lineage on behalf of the capital Immortal Tao in the Southern Sea. The capital Immortal Tao hadn't even entered Jiangbei back then, yet they had already begun searching. Clearly, they had long been plotting this." Li Ziming narrowed his eyes slightly and looked up. "Oh, and what was the result?" "They found another one, the Floating Cloud Body. Capital Immortal Tao kept it under a tight veil, so very few people even know about it. I only learned of it through a friend's idle chatter. However, in the end, they didn't gain much. The one who inherited that Tao lineage was deceived completely by Wenhu and died with their Tao extinguished. Whatever secret techniques they possessed were likely all swindled away." Li Ziming knew Wenhu was anything but simple. Thinking through it carefully, he realized that the original Floating Cloud Cave had been an ally of the Golden Tang Gate, which meant that portion belonged to the Golden Feather sect. Now the sect had been wiped out, making the matter awkward to explain. He asked, "These 3 Tao lineages, how many factions are involved in dividing them?" Chang Yun seemed to immediately understand his concern. The Floating Cloud Body Tao lineage has long been claimed by the Golden Feather sect, as it was their disciples who practiced it. Empty response dispersion is Ping Wangzi's technique, and that portion belongs to me. Hurricane Ghost Yin belongs to the capital Immortal Tao, and they also possess the Floating Cloud Body. Several other factions are quietly waiting, so nothing is certain anymore. He glanced at Li Ziming and smiled. It's not that a Tao lineage can only be divided among one person. The Zai Oshi spirit storage was prepared by the former Miffin Temple for future generations. Any Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator who inherits a Tao lineage can claim a share. How much they gain depends on their own ability. A single formidable direct descendant is worth more than 10 useless fools. Fortunately, this opportunity has fallen into our hands and benefits our own people. It's practically a money tree for us. That clarified Li Ziming's thoughts perfectly. So many opportunities, so many schemes. The Miffin Zai Oshi spirit storage can only be accessed through a proper Tao lineage, and so several factions have turned it into their shared treasure trove. After sorting through the cause and effects, Li Ziming finally asked, I've often heard that Miffin Temple has a powerful background behind it. Which Dao does it belong to? That didn't seem to be a secret, and Chang Yun answered, Miffin is the legacy of Wanglin Upper Sect, a third-rank immortal sect. To this day, they have a grotto heaven hidden within the Great Void. Oh, Li Ziming immediately understood and said, Miffin does have powerful backing after all. Won't stirring up trouble like this lead to disaster? Chang Yun shook his head slightly, while Minghui laughed and said, fellow Taoist Jiajing. How do you know this isn't the very means Miffin Temple left behind to preserve its Dao lineage? If any among these people truly attains the Purple Mansion realm, or if some unforeseen event frees them from a Taoist master's control, then they will have every rightful reason to claim exclusive control over the Xiaoshi spirit storage. With such a venerable golden background, a name that carries such weight, and a legitimate sect lineage. Once they achieve the Purple Mansion realm, do you think they won't desire it? Can they truly ignore the Miffin Dao lineage? Li Ziming fell into a thoughtful silence, and Chang Yun added with a smile, fellow Taoist Minghui is right. Though gathering all 5 Dao lineages yields great gains, the spirit storage cannot truly be opened without the Purple Mansion realm divine abilities of the Miffin lineage. We've divided the spirit storage several times and collected what we could, but the Purple Mansion realm portion that remains requires careful planning. It won't be so easily touched. With everything now clear in his mind, Li Ziming quietly resolved to return and begin preparations. After he offered a few words of thanks, Taoist Master Chang Yun said, no need for that. I value Zhang Kaiyan highly. Because of Ning Tiaxiao, he has formed a bond with your esteemed family. There will be many opportunities for mutual support in the future. Li Ziming continued to chat for a bit more, listening to them discuss who had broken through to the Purple Mansion realm and who had accumulated enough merit to become the Merciful One. Just as he was about to take his leave, Minghui spoke eagerly, across the river lies my Lotus Temple. If you ever have need of anything in the north, please come seek me. Chang Yun watched this and covered his teacup, saying, I say, fellow Taoist Minghui, you are the Merciful One well-versed in the arts of divination. Why not perform a calculation for our friend here and offer him some real assistance? The words made Minghui grit his teeth, his chest tightening with irritation. Calculate your mother's fate. Must I gamble my life away calculating again and again? You really do talk too much. He nearly wanted to slap Chang Yun across the face, but managed only a dry laugh and replied, I dare not directly divine for fellow Taoist, and I fear he himself might not feel at ease letting me do so. That was reasonable enough. Li Ziming held no fondness for any of his ilk and had already intended to refuse. After a few more cups of wine, he had no desire to keep exchanging polite words and took his leave. As soon as he stepped out of the pavilion, he saw Minghui follow him out as well. Li Ziming had no interest in entangling himself with him and stepped into the Great Void, but Minghui chased after him, calling out once they were in the Great Void, fellow Taoist Jiajing, may I speak one more word? Since the other had gone so far as to pursue him here, it would have been inappropriate to keep avoiding him. Li Ziming could only reply, Great Master Minghui, what business do you have with me? Minghui said, only one matter. A friend of this humble monk has inherited a Dao lineage and seeks to ascend as the Merciful One. He wishes to forge a grand temple spirit artifact, but is missing one material, the soul-tuning mulberry wood which is found in the southern borderlands of Azure Pond sect. See Boxu harbors hatred for Buddhist cultivators, so I cannot go there myself. Since you have connections in the Azure Pond sect, if the chance arises, would you keep an eye out for me? Li Ziming wanted to test whether he could cross the river with him, so he continued drifting through the Great Void at his side and responded casually. Minghui then added, my Lotus Temple is after all in the north. There is a bright Yang spirit embryo there. If you can obtain it, I am willing to offer it in exchange. Even now, Li Ziming did not trust the monk. Even if there truly was a bright Yang spirit embryo, he only responded perfunctorily. As they neared the borders of Floating South, Minghui suddenly shifted the topic and said, I did say earlier that I would perform a divination, and it was not my intention to slight you, fellow Taoist. I simply feared you might not allow me to. How about this, instead of choosing a disciple or blood relative, pick a guest cultivator with no deep ties. It will make the calculation easier and more precise, and you won't feel too troubled about it. Li Ziming glanced down. There were many people in the Floating South territory, all still within Jiangbei. Whether he agreed or not, Minghui could probably make his calculations regardless. Cautiously, he said, if that is the case and you insist on performing the divination yourself, then I have no reason to stop you. He dared not let him divine anything related to Nsiwei, who was currently of utmost importance. Instead, he chose someone of little consequence and said, there is an old guest cultivator in my household. His name is Kbuzhai. Minghui's gaze pierced through the Great Void, sweeping once over the land. He identified the man with just the name. He first calculated based on the man's Dharma artifact, ensuring that divining him would not bring serious repercussions. Only then did he begin divining the man himself, and after a moment's thought said, "He nourishes life and guards longevity, growing sturdier with age. Yet his fate clashes with pit water, so he cannot be a leader. Still, he is a very useful guest cultivator." Li Ziming, however, paid closer attention to Minghui's position. The monk had indeed stopped as they reached the riverbank. "This is as far as I will escort you." Minghui departed along the great void, and only then did Li Ziming begin pondering his words. This monk was unexpectedly polite. Buzhai, after all, is merely a guest cultivator, and the concealed containment palace excels in life preservation. With so many years still ahead of him, he may well become an old figure like Njayan in the future. Chapter 11:14, Detailed Explanation, II. Once Li Ziming descended into the lake region, he did not head straight for Zhaijing Mountain, but instead rode toward the central islet. For once, he had some leisure time. The vast courtyard on the island was dominated by a white blossom tree which was over 100 meters tall. Its leaves shone smooth and translucent, casting no shade beneath it. Palm-sized, 5-petaled spirit flowers were scattered throughout its branches, their scarlet and white hues interwoven throughout. It was the Wanglin blossom. A snow-white old ape, clad in simple stone armor with a staff resting on its knees, sat beneath the tree. As Li Ziming approached, the white ape opened its eyes, rose to its feet, and said respectfully, "I greet the Taoist master." Li Ziming nodded. The first task the old ape had taken upon joining the Li family was to guard the Wanglin blossom, a duty it had fulfilled for over 70 years. After the great battle on the river, it had returned here to heal and continue its watch beneath the tree. Li Ziming gazed at the Wanglin blossom tree for a moment. Over the years, his clan had harvested no less than 800 or even 1,000 spirit stones from it, not to mention the many cultivators whose lives had been saved because of this flower. Even Mayashui had relied on it just days ago. Even the scraps that slipped through the fingers of a golden core immortal descendant have brought endless benefits to my family. On the other side of the courtyard stood another tree. However, this was only the size of an ordinary one. It was a mountain persimmon. Brimming with spiritual essence, it twisted and swayed in the corner on its own, but froze the moment it noticed Li Ziming looking at it. This tree was, of course, the spirit persimmon transplanted from Mount Quanwu. Though of humble origins and at the Qi cultivation realm, its fate had been far from ordinary. It had already gained sentience and cultivation as it nibbled on spirit herbs and sipped spirit water on ordinary days. It had reached about the mid-stage of Qi cultivation realm. The Li family also had a snake dragon fruit tree, though of much lower grade, and it was kept only in the spirit garden of the island. After taking everything in, Li Ziming drew a small box from his sleeve and casually opened it. Inside lay a golden hornwood tassel needle, the hornwood golden tassel, a gift from Sword Gate. This is an excellent item for nourishing spirit plants. As soon as the box opened, the Wanglin blossom tree stirred restlessly, while the mountain persimmon tree in the corner stopped pretending altogether, stretching its branches forward. It dared not touch Li Ziming himself, so it secretly tugged at the white ape instead. Li Ziming infused his divine ability into the needle, circulating heavenly light as he waved his hand and dispersed the hornwood golden tassel. The light streamed down upon the two spirit plants, causing them both to rustle and sway in excitement. He had no understanding of the art of nurturing spirit plants, so he merely applied it to those two and instructed the white ape to watch over them carefully before turning away. He flew down to land on Zhaijing Mountain. After a short while, he saw a young man in a crimson-black robe descending on radiant fire. The youth came up from the mountainside to the courtyard and bowed deeply. "Jiangqian greets the Taoist master." Li Ziming had only met Li Jiangqian a few times. He beckoned him closer. Facing this junior to whom he had once granted talisman seeds, he did not withhold a warm smile as he asked, "So, Jiangqian, you are here, but where is Qiwen?" Li Jiangqian replied, reporting to the Taoist master, "My younger sister has encountered a bottleneck in her cultivation of the arts. She has gone to northern Mount Yue to collect shamanic methods and could not accompany me. I have come up the mountain by my father's order to deliver a message." "Speak, then." Li Ziming poured tea and listened while Li Jiangqian spoke. A few days ago, the Wu family from southern Shan Prefecture came to visit. Their foundation establishment ancestor, Wu Shaiyun, came in person and brought gifts of thanks. He said it was to express gratitude to the Taoist master for eliminating devil cultivators near their estate while passing by. My father was unaware of this matter and sent me to inquire. Li Ziming, of course, knew what this was about. He sipped his tea and replied, "I clashed with Yi Hui and happened to pass by the Wu family's lands. My escape light probably burned one or two of those devil cultivators to death. Yi Hui followed behind me and manifested divine abilities. He likely crushed a few of the Wu family's people as well. Their family head certainly knows how to wave a big banner and make a fuss." Li Zhongqian immediately understood, and without showing any timidity before the Taoist master, he replied, "So that's how it is. Profound Peak Gate also has a Wu family guest cultivator related to the Southern Wu family. This incident must have embarrassed him greatly." Li Ziming responded briefly, "Just explain it clearly to your father." Li Zhongqian continued, "Shanji Prefecture has suffered several attacks in recent days. We haven't been able to hold the area. A great deal of supplies was looted, and we even lost one of the towns." That did not surprise Li Ziming in the least. Shanji Prefecture had always been a burden in his hands. He asked, "How does your father plan to handle it?" Li Zhongqian replied respectfully, "Father had long begun relocating the people of Shanji to populate the wilderness. The hearts of the Profound Peak Gate people have not scattered, and with our family's support, many prominent families and even esteemed families are willing to follow. Other than the Sword Gate's territory, which remains untouched, most of the common people have already set out. Father regards this matter as highly important and is personally escorting them." "Good." Li Ziming nodded and said, "Profound Peak Gate will almost certainly have to rebuild its foundations in the wilderness from now on. This is a necessary step, so leave it to your father." After a brief moment, Li Ziming asked, with a tone that carried a faint, unreadable meaning, "How is Chengjai these days?" His eldest son, Li Chengjai, was immortal. Li Ziming had seen him once after attaining the Purple Mansion. His son had brought along his grandson, Li Zhuming, who was at the early stage of qi cultivation realm. Both had been timid and drenched in sweat. Li Chengjai's hair was completely white, and he had not dared look at Li Ziming directly. After a brief visit, he had promptly withdrawn. Although Li Zhuming possessed some cultivation and had been sent over by the eldest son early on, Li Ziming's repeated closed-door cultivation sessions meant they had rarely met. Yet Zhuming's understanding and fear of the Purple Mansion realm was even deeper than his father's, making him behave even more pitifully. At Li Ziming's question, Li Zhongqian immediately answered, "Family elder Chengjai has grown old and is no longer active. Family uncle Zhuming is currently serving in Milin Mountain." Li Ziming knew perfectly well that Zhongqian had little to say. His eldest son Li Chengjai, though distant from him, still had some sense, but the lack of cultivation was fatal. As for Li Zhuming, whom he had personally interacted with, the boy was undeniably mediocre and even somewhat greedy. The fact that Li Zhongqian had refrained from speaking ill of him was already saving face. There was nothing praiseworthy to mention. He lowered his eyes slightly without revealing any emotion and simply replied, "Chengjai is old now and sometimes cannot keep Zhuming in line. Don't let him think I'm paying them any special attention. I'd rather avoid prompting him into doing something foolish." Li Zhongqian had assumed Li Ziming mentioned them as a subtle hint for him to look after them. But after hearing his words, he could only nod, his thoughts gradually clearing. The Taoist master is not entirely indifferent to the family after all. At least those few words touched precisely on the key matters concerning the two seniors. It would be impossible to know them so clearly without some degree of attention. Li Ziming waved his hand, dismissing him, and began mentally tallying matters. There are now 3 major matters. First, the Purple Mansion realm grand formation. I must wait for news and watch how events unfold. Second, resolving the situation in Shanji Prefecture and securing Profound Peak Gate's position. Third, I must deal with Yi Hui once and for all, so he stops opposing my family day after day. Chapter 11:15 Sophistry. Though the capital Immortal Dao had retreated, they could march southward at any time, and Li Ziming could not afford to ignore it. Fortunately, only direct descendants like Guan Gongxiao and Guan Lingdi were still in decent condition after the battle on the river, though Gongsun Beifan and the others had sustained serious injuries. The capital Immortal Dao was not a lineage known for healing, and while Bright Yang could at least stimulate regeneration, Yi Hui was likely even worse in that regard. His only real strength lay in his abundant blood qi. At the very least, there won't be any major movements in the short term. As long as Shanji Prefecture is dealt with, the wilderness will become a prolonged tug-of-war. As for whatever else Yi Hui is planning, that remains to be seen. Then there's Wenhu's Dao lineage. Now that he knew Mifan Temple had a spirit storage hidden within Mount Zioshi, Li Ziming did not mind claiming a share of it. He immediately commanded, "Bring Wenhu up." Li Chenghui soon flew up the mountain, dragging along a disheveled man bound in iron chains that clinked with every step, leaving a faint trail of blood behind him. Wenhu had not been subjected to much torture in the dungeon, but his cultivation had been sealed, and the wounds he had suffered over a year ago had yet to fully heal. Although the Li family had treated him fairly, blood still oozed occasionally from his injuries. This man was calculating and shrewd. Years ago, he had deliberately allowed Hongfu Mountain to fall into the Li family's hands, enabling them to hold the floating South Territory with minimal casualties. As a result, he had earned no hatred from the Li family, kept his presence to a minimum, and had lived comfortably up to this day. If not for the Mifan III-sex inheritance being in his possession, Li Ziming would not even have remembered him, much less allowed him to linger in the dungeon. Looking at him now, Li Ziming had little to say beyond, lacking in fortune. A thought even surfaced in his mind. Once I've taken the Dao lineage from him, perhaps I could exchange him for Nsiwei with Yi Hui. Since this involves Mount Zaiyoshi, Yi Hui just might agree to the trade. But as he examined Wenhu, whose cultivation had been sealed and whose lips were bound to prevent spellcasting, a faint heavenly light flickered between his brows, and he silently rejected the idea. This man is no ordinary figure, and with Mount Zaiyoshi and Miffin involved, handing him over to the Baiat capital immortal Dao might pose too great a threat. It's better to kill him. Li Ziming casually removed the seal on Wenhu's mouth. Seated at the head of the hall, he watched as the man writhed on the ground, struggling to rise, and rasped out, "Criminal Wenhu pays respects to the Taoist master." Wenhu's so-called crime was merely deceiving the Purple Mansion Realm cultivator, referring to the absence of Taoist Chidu of the capital immortal Dao. As the one who had given assurances, the blame had fallen on him. Wenhu had never protested his innocence and silently accepted it. Li Ziming did not speak, merely glancing at him. Truthfully, Li Ziming held a certain appreciation for the man's talent and cunning, yet this was a conflict at the level of the Purple Mansion Realm, far beyond what his own wishes could dictate. To Purple Mansion Realm cultivators, most Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators were nothing more than pawns. What truly mattered was prestige and reputation. Wenhu had originally been a subordinate of Taoist Master Yi Hui. In Li Ziming's hands, he was a bargaining chip, not a piece to play. If Li Ziming were to openly accept him, it would forge a true enmity. Not only that, but it would also break the established rules. If Wenhu reappeared, he could expect to see Yi Hui tearing through the great void with his own hands to reclaim him. Wenhu immediately understood the situation he was in with just one glance. The blade was already at his neck, and he bowed deeply. "Your humble servant pays respects to Taoist Master Zheajing." The Miffin Dao lineage never intended to slight you, Taoist Master. I was merely following instructions passed down by a senior and never expected to end up in such a state. Despite his words, Wenhu's heart was filled with bitterness. He had clearly taken a stand for Baiat capital immortal Dao. No matter how much he tried to shift the blame to the Dao lineage or Floating Cloud Cave now, it would be hard to regain Li Ziming's trust. Sure enough, when he tried to lay the blame on Floating Cloud Cave, Li Ziming made no comment. He only asked calmly, "Where is the Dao lineage of Hidden Cloud Cave?" Wenhu's heart thudded as he realized his death was near. Sweat poured down his face, but what could he do before a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator? The only reason he still had a chance to speak was because they were conservative and unwilling to violate heavenly order by immediately searching his soul. But once the name Hidden Cloud Dao lineage was spoken, terror gripped him to the core. Thoughts raced through his mind as he replied, "Taoist Master, I can write down the Hidden Cloud Dao lineage for you right now. Not just that, I have also noticed traces of other Dao lineages of Miffin in Mount Zaiyoshi." Li Ziming's expression grew subtly strange. While part of him recognized the truth in Wenhu's words, he also frowned at the man's cunning. Silently, his killing intent deepened. He smiled slightly as he asked, "Oh, and which one might that be?" Wenhu spoke with utmost respect, "Taoist Master, I once cultivated in the Southern Sea. Under Taoist Chidu's orders, I searched for traces of the Miffin Dao lineage and sensed something in Danjing Wulo, but I secretly concealed it and no one knows." Suspicion stirred in Li Ziming's heart. He had already seen through Wenhu's excuses, but he deliberately asked, "Why did you not report this to Chidu?" Wenhu wiped his sweat away as he answered, "I was not entirely ignorant of the Miffin Dao lineage's intentions, nor of the plans of the Taoist masters. Thus, I privately communicated with those of like mind and did not wish to report to Chidu." Li Ziming interrupted softly, "Hidden Cloud Dao lineage." Li Chenghui immediately held out a jade slip, Wenhu had no choice but to take it and begin carving rapidly. After 15 minutes, he had written out a scripture titled Zaiyoshi Tumwind Yin Conducting Art. Wenhu continued inscribing on another jade slip, while Li Ziming casually took the scripture, reading with his spiritual sense as a faint heavenly light flickered between his brows. Zaiyoshi Tumwind Yin Conducting Art, a 4th grade Foundation Establishment Realm technique of the Hurricane Ghost Yin. With his divine abilities, Li Ziming could clearly discern whether a technique had any issues. When Wenhu finished the next inscription, it turned out to be the Zaiyoshi Sky Cleansing Scattered Cloud Art, likely the one Chang Yun had mentioned as obtained through harmful means. Zaiyoshi Sky Cleansing Scattered Cloud Art, a 4th grade Foundation Establishment Realm technique of the floating cloud body. Li Ziming deliberately asked, "Where did this one come from?" Wenhu wiped his sweat again, his face filled with fear, and answered respectfully, "It came from Fu. I used certain methods to torture him, forcing him to spill everything in a short time." Li Ziming chuckled softly. "I heard it took you no more than 15 minutes to storm the mountain. Quite the skill you have, it seems." The man trembled with fear as he accepted a jade slip, then began writing again. After another 15 minutes, he presented another jade slip, saying, "Song of the Feathered Guest." At last, Li Ziming showed some interest. It was half a manual of secret techniques that seemed quite profound. Wenhu bowed deeply, speaking with an air of practiced composure. This was passed to me by my master before his death. He said our ancestor had obtained it from the body of a fallen direct descendant of Wanglin upper sect. It allows one to fold feathers into a robe and was originally a formidable defensive technique. As you can surely tell, Taoist master, this is likely a technique between 5th and 6th grade, a Purple Mansion realm art. Only half remains now, and as for the rest. He raised his brows and continued, I have secretly investigated, and it may very well be in the hands of that direct descendant of Miffin in the Southern Sea. Li Ziming glanced at him and put the item away. When he looked at Wenhu trembling and kneeling on the ground in fear, his voice came out softly, yet it made Wenhu's very soul quake. He spoke with a hint of amusement. You dare lie to me. Chapter 11:16, Arranging All Matters. You dare lie to me. When Li Ziming uttered those words, violet flames surged across the mountainside, and heavenly light illuminated everything. The stone bricks grew scorching hot as blazing radiance shone down. Wenhu's face was already pressed to the ground. He was too terrified to lift it, as the air filled with the sharp hiss of flesh being seared. Leaving aside the consequences of deceiving a Purple Mansion realm cultivator, to have a Purple Mansion realm cultivator utter that simple statement in person was already a form of psychological torment on a completely different level for any cultivator. Whatever Wenhu might have been thinking, Li Chenghui, standing to the side, felt a chill race up his spine just from hearing those words. Even though he was not the one who had lied, fear still crept into his heart. Uncle now truly carries the aura of a Taoist master. Li Ziming's heart held little anger as he looked down at Wenhu lying on the ground. There was more regret than anything else. The man's lie was half-truth and half-falsehood, and executed with considerable skill. The Miffin direct descendant he spoke of was most likely the one lured away by the capital Immortal Tao and deceived into death and obliteration. The Purple Mansion realm had been involved in that affair, and it was deeply buried. Had Chang Yun not mentioned it in passing, Li Ziming truly would not have been able to verify it. Wenhu's mention of a Miffin direct disciple was not baseless. Such a person had indeed existed and had interacted with him. By using that detail, Wenhu could guard against Li Ziming's divination techniques and ensure that the finer points of his story would not be mistaken. After all, someone unfamiliar with the other Miffin Tao lineages could never have fabricated such a figure out of thin air. As long as Li Ziming lacked concrete information, Wenhu could have continued weaving his tale. If not for the fact that they had obtained Fu Du's head and used sophisticated shamanic arts to divine that he had died by ambush, even the Zai Oshi sky-cleansing scattered cloud art would have been difficult to use as evidence. In the span of a single breath, he spun a story with a beginning and an end. If not for his incomplete planning and his eagerness to prove his worth, he might have revealed more of the Zai Oshi sky-cleansing scattered cloud art, or at least left fewer loose ends. Li Ziming sipped his tea, while Wenhu lifted his face that was scorched black from the heat. It was hard to see if he had any tears. Catching Li Ziming's look, Li Chenghui stepped forward and gripped Wenhu's chains. If you just confessed everything, the Taoist master would have judged it accordingly. Why go to such lengths? Wenhu opened his eyes, though they had been burned white, and lifted his head. I have spent my life scheming and fighting in the Southern Sea. Whenever a plot succeeds, it is only natural that I claim victory. When it fails and I am bested, then I deserve to lose. There is no reason for me to sit and wait for some Taoist master's judgment. Li Ziming set down his jade cup and said with a nod, very well. As soon as the words rang out, a surge of heavenly light swept through the violet flames, tearing Wenhu's flesh and bones apart and reducing him to ash. The various chains and rune-etched iron clasps on his body melted cleanly away as well. A Foundation Establishment realm cultivator who had been kneeling on the ground had been scattered into nothingness in the span of a single breath, vanishing like cloud smoke. Clang. Several warped and charred fragments of iron fell to the ground, the remnants of Wenhu's shackles. He had cultivated the hurricane Ghost Yin, which was countered by Bright Yang. A single sweep had completely dissolved even his cultivation, without so much as a ripple of a phenomenon left behind. Li Chenghui stood quietly to the side and exhaled softly. Li Ziming placed 3 jade slips on the table, rubbed the center of his brow, and asked, Chenghui, one is the hurricane Ghost Yin, the other is the floating cloud body. Both are 4th-grade techniques and would greatly benefit the family's foundation. See if there's anyone in the family interested in cultivating them. Li Chenghui thought for a moment and replied, I'll check who among the younger generation is at the point of beginning the qi cultivation realm. Li Ziming merely tasked him with making the arrangements, but no matter which family members he chose, none could possibly match the spirit storage of the Miffin lineage at Mount Zai Oshi. He asked, We brought back people from floating south and hidden east after destroying sects and seizing leverage over esteemed families. Since they all come from the same cave domain, is there any talent aligned with unified qi among them? Li Chenghui replied, I will look into it. He immediately sent someone to investigate, and before long, a palace guard returned with a jade slip. Li Chenghui took it and began reading. The benefits of sound household governance was quickly evident. Li Chenghui had clearly been paying attention to these details long beforehand and had meticulously recorded everything. Without needing to delay, he glanced through the slip and reported, "There is one surnamed Wang whose qi aligns with floating cloud body, currently at the late stage of the qi cultivation realm. There is also a guest cultivator surnamed Huang who practices floating cloud body. As for Hurricane Ghostian, there is no one whose qi aligns with it." Li Ziming said casually, "The Wang family branch in Jiangbei is vast, and Wang Qi still serves in the capital Immortal Dao. They are difficult to discipline in Mifan territory. Since this Wang family member is already at the late stage of the qi cultivation realm, support him and help him attempt foundation establishment realm if possible. That will also help stabilize the people relocated from floating south." As he gave the order, a premonition formed in his heart. This time, we can forget about claiming much from the spiritual trove. We'll just test the waters first. It's not a matter that will be settled in 1 or 2 attempts. We can revisit it once the younger generation rises. Li Chenghui understood and prepared to withdraw after receiving his orders. But then the Taoist master, dressed in white robes embroidered with golden patterns, closed his eyes and exhaled softly. Chenghui, destiny and timing, talent and wit, innate ability and cultivation. Few ever possess all these at once. We often believe that cultivation and scheming are of utmost importance, but we must also remember that in this world, even the most brilliant cannot reach the Purple Mansion realm if their fortune is exhausted, nor wield divine abilities if their fate is too shallow. I am enlightened. Li Chenghui knew he was referring to Wenhu and answered respectfully. Li Ziming mused aloud, "Summon the Zhuang generation, and also invite the old master, Mount Qingdu." Mount Qingdu had now been developed with several pavilion towers, and the forest had thinned. What was once a secluded retreat for a few foundation establishment realm direct descendants had become the bustling peak of the family chief, with streaks of light from flight techniques rising and falling everywhere and people hurrying about. Li Qian descended onto the mountainside. The silver-white pendant at her neck shimmered faintly as she walked, her face contemplative. Now in the 7th stage of qi cultivation realm, she was considered one of the mainstays of the Li family. Li Qian had gone to northern Mount Yue but returned empty-handed, so she was feeling somewhat dejected. Profound shamanic spells truly are far too difficult, thought Li Qian. The profound shamanic spells was a shamanic spell art obtained from a talisman seed. In truth, calling it a shamanic spell art hardly did it justice. It was a grand compendium of shamanic spell arts, containing an astonishing number of techniques, primarily in 3 branches: transformation, shamanic talisman Dao, and spirit manipulation. The shamanic art was exceedingly complex, yet it was divided into only 3 major chapters, without even a first, second, or third tier. Despite its profound and mysterious nature, the chapters were arranged so carelessly that they seemed thrown together at random. After all, it is an ancient cultivation art. Simplicity was considered a virtue. Li Qian did not practice many spell arts. Aside from her regular cultivation, almost all her time had been devoted to profound shamanic spells, yet she had barely scratched the surface. Following Li Zhongqian's advice, she had focused more on transformation techniques for self-preservation, while the rest were merely calculation methods. After all, the opening line of profound shamanic spells stated, "Only upon attaining the first profound mysteries may one begin to practice shamanic spell arts." When Li Qian pondered this phrase, she realized that the so-called first profound mysteries referred to the Purple Mansion realm. In ancient times, one could hardly be considered accomplished without at least one divine ability, truly enviable. Li Qian shook off her thoughts and turned her gaze toward Mount Qingdu. She had visited only a handful of times, yet she had always harbored deep reverence for this place. Chapter 11:17, Arranging All Matters II. Qingdu oversaw the affairs of the family chief. In earlier years, it had managed the direct mortal bloodline, but as more direct-line cultivators emerged and the mortal bloodline spread into collateral branches, its staff had expanded, and it had shifted its focus primarily to governing cultivators. Later, as more outsiders and guest cultivators married into the Li family, most of those captured by the Jade Court were also handed over to Qingdu's jurisdiction. The Jade Court retained its investigative authority, but trials and sentencing had shifted toward the lower-ranked cultivators across the 16 prefectures, 2 peaks, and 1 mountain, causing its status to gradually fall below Qingdu's. When Li Chenghui broke through to the foundation establishment realm and mastered untraceable presence, a technique capable of discerning the authenticity of lower-tier qi cultivation realm cultivators, it had little impact on the upper echelons of the Li family. However, it became a significant reform for the governance structure of the entire peak administration. The investigation even exposed 3 direct line elders, who were subsequently confined on the continent, elevating Qingdu's status even further. Still, even at the very height of Qingdu's growing influence, there was still a secluded side peak, lush with trees, where not a single extra pavilion had been built and few people ever came or went. Upon arriving there, Li Qian remained extremely respectful and spoke to the middle-aged man at the entrance. Please inform the old lord. The Taoist master requests an audience. The middle-aged man was actually Li Qian's own elder brother. He dared not speak much and instead nodded repeatedly before going inside. Moments later, an elderly man came down the stairs. The old man's cheeks had sunken in, giving his face a gaunt appearance, yet none of his warmth had been lost. His eyes, narrowed into dark slits by his smile, gleamed from within his wrinkles. His mouth parted slightly, and Li Qian couldn't help but want to smile with him as she spoke softly. Is the old lord still in good health? Well, quite well. Li Xuanxun came forward quickly, and Li Qian hurried to offer her hand to support him. The old man waved it aside and lifted his head. Ziming has returned. Come then, come, let's go right away. Li Xuanxun was likely the only one who still dared to call Taoist Master Zheajing by the name Ziming. Li Qian followed as they took to the air, and Li Xuanxun sighed. A few months ago, that he Jiuman died of old age. He used too much of his blood essence for artifact refinement and only lived to 150. Such a pity, and he didn't even manage to pass all his knowledge to Kuai and the others. The old man couldn't even die peacefully. He Jiumen had been an old cultivator from the western shore and had maintained good relations with Li Xuanxun in recent years. Li Qian had not known he had passed away, and before she could respond, Li Xuanxun continued, Dong hasn't said a word in the Jade Court these past years, and Zheyan has gone traveling again. Qiang at least knows how to let things go. He's gone boating on the lake. As for me, I've no one to talk to on this mountain. The few who come in 2s and 3s only do so because they think this old man still has some influence. Their false politeness is tedious. Aside from Li Qingheng, Li Qian had followed Li Xuanxun from the very beginning of her time on the mountain. Hearing his words filled her with guilt, but Li Xuanxun said, and Zheyan has only a few years left to live, yet they still sent him north, and guessed cultivator and has run into trouble too. What sense does any of this make? I must have a good talk with the Taoist master about it later. By the time those few brief exchanges were over, they had descended onto Zhaijing Mountain, where a man and a woman stood at the foot of the slope. The man in the lead was strikingly handsome, clad in pleated robes, his entire figure glowing with golden light like ripened wheat, split into 6 streams that danced with lively grace like sparrows. The woman beside him was plain in appearance, wore no cosmetics, and was dressed in a simple gown with only a sword strapped to her back. Uncle Zhuluo, Aunt Xinghen. After Li Qian greeted them, the two hurried to bow before Li Xuanxun, the family's ancestor. Li Xuanxun quickly helped them up, glanced at Li Xinghen with some surprise and asked, Zhuluo often comes to Qingdu to visit me, so I've seen him quite a bit. But Xinghen, I rarely see you. Where do you cultivate these days? Li Xinghen cupped her hands and replied, My lord, I cultivate along the northern shore of Moongaze Lake. The cliffs there are steep and well-suited for sword arts. Li Xinghen seemed unremarkable at first glance, yet her voice was clear and crisp as falling snow, carrying a certain charm. At the mention of sword arts, Li Xuanxun's eyes lit up and he asked, Have you produced sword qi? Yes, my lord, I have, replied Li Xinghen. As they drew near the place where the Taoist master cultivated, their voices grew hushed and none dared to speak. Li Xuanxun did not press them, and they ascended together to the summit, where gardenias swirled through the air, carpeting the ground like a layer of white frost. Several jade pillars lay toppled amid the sea of blossoms, with faint wisps of violet flame drifting among them. The Taoist master, in white robes embroidered with golden patterns, sat at the head, reading a jade slip. When he saw Li Xuanxun approach, he immediately rose to greet him, helped the old man to a seat, and poured tea. Only then did the younger generation dare to move, standing quietly to the side. Li Zhuluo glanced over and saw his father, Li Chenghui, standing silently nearby. His heart could not help but pound nervously, thinking, what is this about? With all the juniors present, Li Xuanxun did not speak immediately, but instead exchanged a few words of concern with Li Ziming. Only then did Li Chenghui speak. Taoist master, Zhufeng and Zhaoyang of the first lineage went to the wilderness and have not yet returned. Li Ziming nodded in response, then looked over at Li Zhuluo and Li Xinghen before him. He seemed rather satisfied. His gaze lingered on the sword behind Li Xinghen as he nodded and said, Our family rose to prominence through the sword, yet apart from my 2 brothers, few among the younger generation are fond of it. The 2 of you, one cultivating Zheng metal, the other cultivating Jade True, both use sword arts. That is commendable. Li Zhuluo practiced the gold aura profound inquiry technique and was the first in the family to do so. Li Xinghen was more unusual, since she cultivated the Yu family Dao lineage's Jade True Dao unification technique. This technique had been obtained from the Yu family's secret archives. Although it had no official grade, It was one of the rare cultivation arts passed down in complete form. Hardly anyone in the Li family had practiced it over the years, largely because gathering the necessary qi was extremely difficult. The Jade True Dao unification technique required carving floating patterns and demanded that a qi cultivation realm cultivator spend entire days holding a jade plate, chanting scriptures, and gathering qi. Although 5 or 6 years was not long in the grand scheme of cultivation, this daily ritual consumed far more time than other qi gathering methods, which required only an hour or 2 each day. It slowed one's cultivation, so naturally few were willing to do it. Moreover, the spiritual qi for this technique had to be gathered by the same person continuously and could not be alternated among different practitioners. Many of the original scriptures had been lost when the Yu family was destroyed, making the process even harder. Although Li Xinghan's father was of the direct bloodline, his innate ability were mediocre, so he naturally had no access to such a treasure. Yet misfortune and fortune were intertwined. Since her father's cultivation was lacking, he was not even qualified to participate in the Great River battle and held only the status of a direct descendant. As a result, he had to marry a woman with ties to the Yu family. Li Xinghan's maternal uncle had once been a guest cultivator of the Yu family and was deeply versed in their scriptures. Out of great affection for his niece, he personally spent 5 years gathering the qi for her. Her maternal family's efforts had not been in vain, and when Li Ximing looked at her now, his eyes truly lit up with surprise. The more diverse a family's Dao lineages, the better, as only then would they not be suppressed by a single Dharma artifact, nor be devastated by a single wave of spiritual aura. His own direct descendant lacked a Jade True Dao lineage, so Li Ximing was quite pleased. He smiled and said, "Your immortal foundation carries the essence of true unification, and you cultivate Jade True Dao in this generation. In the past, Jade True Unified Void Essence True Monarch was also a sword immortal. When he attained fruition, Jade True itself may well be an excellent Dao lineage for sword cultivation, no less than Zheng Metal. Focus diligently on your swordsmanship." Li Ximing doesn't need to make any promises. As a Taoist master, speaking such words before the Li family's ancestor and the Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator who governed Qingdu already signified that Li Xinghan had captured his attention. Though the girl harbored no complicated thoughts, she understood this clearly and hurriedly knelt. "Thank you, Taoist master." Chapter 11:18, Arranging All Matters. Li Xinghan thanked him, and Li Xuanxun nodded repeatedly before asking, "Do you have a Dharma sword?" At those words, everyone knew a sword was about to be bestowed. Li Xinghan respectfully replied, "I have a lower-grade Qi cultivation realm Dharma sword called Northern Jade. It was part of my uncle's collection and was once a Dharma artifact of the Yu family. It was forged long ago, likely dating back to the Jiang family, and is quite practical." The Yu family. Li Ximing's brows rose. Since Li Xuanxun had brought it up, it was clear that he would be bestowing a Dharma artifact. Li Ximing said, "Yu Mujian once had a sword called Copper Cash. It was severed by Brother Jun, and the remaining portion still exists in the treasury. It was forged from the copper of Yan Mountain and the waters of Piaming Mountain. The forging method was ordinary, but the material is excellent." Everyone listened intently as Li Ximing continued, "When you master threefold moonlight, come up the mountain. I will personally find someone to forge you a sword using copper cash as the material." Li Xinghan quickly bowed and thanked him, joy spreading across her face. The promise of this Dharma sword seemed to excite her even more than the Taoist master's earlier guidance. Li Ximing then turned to glance at Li Zhuliuo. The Dharma sword at Li Zhuliuo's waist was already a Foundation Establishment realm, its body a deep brownish yellow. Li Ximing found it familiar. It should be the standard Dharma sword Zushi once used by his elder brother Li Zijai. Though merely of Foundation Establishment realm material, it was still quite suitable for him. In recent years, Li Chenghui had grown closer to Li Zijai and his wife. As a result, Li Zhuliuo's cultivation resources and Dharma artifacts were well provided for and mostly supplied by his grandfather. What he used was no worse than what the Azure Pond sect direct descendant received, placing him in a class of his own within the Li family. Thus, Li Ximing merely asked a few questions about cultivation, then dismissed the 2 juniors, keeping only Li Qian behind. He said, "You and Jiangqian wait at the foot of the mountain first." Once the juniors had departed, Li Xuanxun finally spoke. He did not inquire about Ansiwei but instead said, "Those 2 children are quite good, and then there are Zhufeng and Zhaoyang. Your younger brother once looked them over and said that their only noteworthy trait was their honesty. Yet now, aside from Zhaowei, Zhuliuo, and Xinghan, they are the only 2 who can truly hold their own in the Zhuing generation." His tone carried no anger, only a trace of lamentation as he said, "The rest of the dozen or so. The fickle, the foolish, and the inept are tolerable, but those who shut themselves away to indulge in their own pleasures, secretly drowning themselves in wine and lust, since it does not involve the common folk, Qingdu cannot punish them too harshly and can only let it slide. As for the remaining 1 or 2, they are still imprisoned." Li Chenghui quickly lowered his head and apologized. It is we, the elders. We have failed to teach our younger generation properly. Your Chengming generation is either cultivating or dueling, and now there are so few of you left. You guys are not to blame. Li Xuanxuan merely waved his hand. Zhuming was born with a troublesome temperament, and that is a problem. When Li Ziming caught his grandson's name, he immediately understood. He glanced at Li Chenghui and asked, "So grandfather is blaming me. I wonder what foolish thing Zhuming has done this time." After all, Li Ziming had just mentioned Li Zhuming. If something had escaped his notice, then it would fall on Li Chenghui's shoulders. Yet Chenghui had not withheld anything. He truly had no idea what foolishness Zhuming had committed. But the last person who had deceived a Taoist master had been reduced to ashes, and with that sharp gaze now fixed upon him, even though the Taoist master was his elder, he still froze in fear. Fortunately, Li Xuanxuan was shrewd in his elder years. A single exchanged glance told him all he needed to know, and he said, "This matter is beyond Qingdu's jurisdiction, and yet the blame still falls on me." Li Xuanxuan continued quietly. "Some years ago, when you were in seclusion and Zhuming's cultivation was still lacking, I thought to help him and asked Jiangqian to arrange a position for him. But he refused to go, so the matter was dropped and no one in the family knew. Later, when Chenghui came out of seclusion, he assigned Zhuming a task and he went reluctantly. Fearing that his cultivation might not earn respect, I privately gave him a spirit item to aid his cultivation. And yet, when I saw him a few days ago, his cultivation had not advanced at all." Li Ziming straightened, poured tea for Li Xuanxuan and said, "I have been negligent in discipline." Li Xuanxuan shook his head. "A Taoist master's bloodline kept idle at home, so be it, we do not lack him. Whether it is shameful is another matter, but because I hope for his improvement, I must speak more than a few words." Silence settled over the mountain. Fearing that Li Ziming might grow angry, Li Xuanxuan continued, "I am not saying he is entirely useless. In the younger generation, Zhao Wei goes without saying, and aside from him, only Zhu Feng, Zhaoyang, Zhu Luo, and Xinghan have truly amounted to something. Zhuming, at the very least, is willing to listen to his father, and that does not make him the worst among his brothers." Li Ziming now understood his meaning and replied, "Just give him a nominal position and leave it at that. I never expected him to accomplish much anyway. It'll be enough if he focuses on guiding the children with ambition. Does grandfather expect us to prepare resources and assign someone to watch over his cultivation day and night? Our family has always selected the best through innate ability and intellect. We cannot break that rule." Li Xuanxuan could only sigh and change the subject. "Chenghui, your immortal foundation is indeed formidable, but in my opinion, it should not be used for everything." Li Chenghui looked slightly surprised as Li Xuanxuan went on. "There are some things you may not perceive. When the water is too clear, no fish can survive. In the 2 years you have led Qingdu, both the guest cultivators and the direct lineage have felt as if they are walking on thin ice. They have begun secretly communicating to evade your scrutiny. On the surface, things appear more orderly, but in truth, they have become more concealed. That is not a good sign. As long as the private actions remain visible to us, then even if there are grievances or misunderstandings, it is of little consequence. What we should fear is matters below becoming so cautious and hidden that neither you nor I can see them, forcing us to spend twice the effort to investigate. There are countless wondrous spell arts in the world. They will eventually come to understand and surpass your marvels. If we place too much trust in your immortal foundation, we may end up deceived and manipulated by them instead." Li Chenghui lowered his head in thought, and the elder said, "Secondly, you should now focus on your cultivation and not neglect the fundamentals for the trivial. Only matters of great importance concerning the direct descendants should call you forth to provide testimony. After all, this current state where every decision must pass through Qingdu and be judged by it breaks the proper order." In truth, Li Chenghui had only just refined 2 Dharma artifacts and had yet to fully explore their many wondrous uses. He had remained stationed in Qingdu purely out of a sense of duty. Deep down, he felt that the elder had long noticed this and that his words were partly intended to help him step away. He could not help but sigh inwardly. The elder says little, but he is the one who truly sees through everything in this family. After all, he is someone who has watched over it for more than a century. There was a hint of respect in his voice as he said, "I shall obey. I will return and relinquish Qingdu's authority." Li Xuanxuan stroked his beard with a smile and said, "In that case, let Zhuluo take charge of Qingdu, elder." Chenghui wanted to refuse again, but when he saw Li Xuanxuan wave his hand, he could only bow and withdraw, leaving the grandfather and grandson alone. Chapter 11:19, Arranging All Matters IV. Li Xuanxuan glanced at the Taoist master silently sipping his tea beside him and asked, "Ming'er, where do you think the Zhuing generation falls short?" The Taoist master in embroidered white robes drew back the heavenly light between his brows, took a sip of tea, and said, "Too kind. And thus vulnerable to deception." Li Xuanxuan praised, "Indeed." Li Ziming said quietly, "Father told me since I was a child that Moongay's Lake is a treacherous land. One who governs a family must be most skilled in mischief, cunning, and deception in order to subdue such people, and thus bring stability to the common folk. Zhuliuo and Xinghen are not lacking in ability, but their noble birth has given them lives of ease. They are fine in cultivation and spell duels, but if they encounter people like Wenhu or Chen Yang, they will likely be deceived. In truth, Li Ziming was putting it mildly. Li Zhuliuo was not foolish, but if he faced someone like Wenhu, there was a high chance he would be manipulated with ease. That was precisely what worried Li Xuanxuan, who said, "Who can say? People grow with age." Cheng Hui was once just a quiet and taciturn boy of the Chengming generation, and no one thought he would amount to much. Let us wait and see. The matter of Nsiwei had crossed his mind several times, yet Li Xuanxuan ultimately did not bring it up. He simply rose and said, "I have stayed on this peak for too long, so it is inevitable that I speak of family matters. Do not think me long-winded. Grandfather's guidance brings endless benefit to the family." Li Ziming escorted him down the mountain. At the foot, Li Zhongqian and Li Qian were waiting nearby, while a broad-faced man stood behind them. Li Ziming, not inclined to climb back up, sat down in the pavilion at the mountain's base and asked, "How is the matter of Miffin progressing?" Li Zhongqian spoke respectfully. "The Wang family has arrived. This is Wang Kuan. He is from a different branch than Wang He, yet he too is of the Jiangbei Wang family's direct lineage." The Wang family was somewhat unique. They were a powerful local force originally migrated from the Qi region of Zhao State. They not only had a considerable presence in Floating South and Hidden East, but had once extended their lineage all the way to the Golden Tang territories. As such, the Wang family could no longer be regarded as mere guest cultivators. Li Ziming glanced at him. Wang Kuan was plainly dressed and rather unremarkable in appearance, so he asked, "Jiangbei is unsettled, and your Wang family has only recently relocated to the Floating South territory. Have you encountered any difficulties?" Wang Kuan clasped his hands and bowed, his gaze lowered respectfully to the ground as he answered with utmost humility, "The Hidden East territory is in turmoil, and the Wang family was able to escape that sea of suffering thanks to the patronage of the main house. Now with new territory granted to us, everyone has spirit fields to cultivate and receive stipends. Even the common family members live in peace and contentment, with no hardships to speak of." His demeanor and choice of words made the Taoist master pause briefly. Li Ziming swept his gaze over him and noted that the man was neither young nor old, around 50 years of age. He asked, "What spell arts have you studied? Do you possess any skills for your livelihood? Does your family have any crafts or trades to sustain itself?" Wang Kuan kept his eyes respectfully lowered, his submission absolute and his manners more impeccable than anyone's. He replied solemnly, "Honored Taoist master, I have practiced the sword since childhood and have gained some skill, having cultivated sword qi for many years. My elder brother, Wang Quidao, is currently near the Floating South territory and possesses some alchemical abilities to supplement the family's livelihood." Li Ziming noticed the man's calm state of mind that was neither servile nor arrogant. He was clearly no ordinary person, and his words were measured and restrained. A faint unease stirred in Li Ziming's heart. This one is no simple character either. Wenhu Ding Weizang Gongsun Beifan, and now Wang Quidao and Wang Kuan. Jiangbei truly is heaven's favored land. It is far from ordinary, and far too unusual. Li Ziming remained silent, and Wang Kuan could only continue kneeling. Yet a strange premonition suddenly arose within the Taoist master. How does my family compare to the Xiao family of old? Back then, when the Xiao family gazed upon my ancestor Tangya, did they look upon him just as I now look upon Wang Kuan? Did the Purple Mansion realm cultivators of that era think the same of my family? First there was Wan Huaqian and Yu Yufeng, then came Li Qijing and Yu Muxian, and now there is Li Tangya. Moongaze Lake truly is heaven's beloved land. Countless thoughts swirled through his mind, but after a brief moment he nodded and said, "Very well. Since you are willing to serve in my household, your treatment will be according to that of our family's cultivators." Wang Kuan nodded respectfully. Then with a flick of the Taoist master's finger, a jade slip landed before him as the Taoist master said, "Our family possesses the Zai-Oshi sky cleansing scattered cloud art, which is far superior to whatever minor technique you have studied. Moreover, it includes a foundation establishment realm chapter. Begin cultivating it first." A gleam of joy lit up Wang Kuan's eyes. He understood the Taoist master's meaning almost instantly. The Wang family had Wang He, who was in the capital Immortal Dao in Jiangbei. The Wang family was the foremost family there, with many branches even among their direct lineage. If the Li family desired to maintain stable rule, having a foundation establishment realm cultivator from the Wang family was indispensable. He accepted the jade slip respectfully and expressed his gratitude. "This junior thanks the Taoist master. The Wang family will remain loyal servants of the main house in Jiangbei. We would give our lives without hesitation for the Taoist master and the family head." Seeing that he had at least grasped the surface meaning, Li Ziming spoke more freely and nodded, Our family will set aside portions of the 3 aspects breaking realm pill, white breath yellow bud pill, and other such pills for you. When you are ready to attempt a breakthrough, come to Zhaijing Mountain. Wang Quan thanked him respectfully and took his leave, descending the mountain. Once he had departed, Li Ziming turned to Li Jianqian and asked, "Has a candidate been chosen from the clan to cultivate the Miffin technique?" Li Jianqian nodded in reply, "Honored Taoist master, I have just checked. Unfortunately, Sister Kuai, who has a higher innate ability, has already broken through and cannot start the cultivation. Among the Jiang generation, there are 3 who have reached the 5th or 6th stage of the embryonic breathing. This technique requires time to gather qi, but fortunately the Wang family still has a stock of what is needed. We have retrieved it and will first have one of the younger family members begin cultivating, and then decide further steps." After seeing Wang Quan earlier, Li Ziming felt that he was at least capable. Given a few years, his cultivation might not turn out bad either, and that thought eased his mind. He said, "Wang Quan is a man of ability. As it stands, the Miffin Dao lineage cannot proceed without him, which shows he also carries sufficient fortune. You must watch him closely. The Wang family of Zhangbei is too vast to be easily bound, but if you make good use of Wang Quan, he will be no less valuable than Ding Weizeng. This junior will remember your words," replied Li Jianqian. Having settled the matter of Miffin, Li Ziming drew a stone box from his sleeve, which contained the final testament of Changxi. He handed it to Li Jianqian and said, "I will make a trip to Purple Smoke Gate and perhaps stop by Xuanmiao Temple afterward to settle the matter of Shanji Prefecture first. Notify Cheng Hui and have him gather the people of Profound Peak Gate. Tell them to retrieve the items beneath the Seat of Stillness Peak Hall and cross-verify them with this portion." He did not linger and transformed into heavenly light. Li Jianqian remained bowed until that heavenly light vanished completely over the horizon, then rose and turned to Li Qiuan asking, "Sister, how have you been these past few months?" "Not much progress." Li Qiuan responded softly, a trace of worry on her face as she said, "It seems Shanji Prefecture cannot be held any longer. The entire prefecture is about to be lost, and all of Profound Peak Gate's foundations will be scattered. I wonder how the Kong family members will react." Li Jianqian replied, "What reaction can they possibly have? Has our Li family not already shown them enough benevolence and righteousness? Look at Xuanmiao Temple and Jingyi Mountain. Our family is preserving their Dao lineage. If something cannot be held, no matter how precious it is, it must be abandoned. Should our family risk lives to protect it?" Li Qiuan sighed, "Brother Jianqian, that is indeed the truth, but clarity is often lost when one is caught in the middle of events. In Profound Peak Gate's eyes, it may not look like a rescue at all. They might see it as something their ancestor bartered for with spirit artifacts and treasures, something not offered to any other family. Everything now depends on whether Kong Guxi can make sense of it. If he cannot, his fate will be far worse than Yuan Fiao's." Chapter 11:20, The Dark Night. Wilderness. Kong Guxi had fully recovered from his injuries. Dressed only in a Taoist robe, he rode the wind across the territory with 2 disciples close behind. As he scanned the region, he saw countless figures scattered below. Profound Peak Gate had relocated 500,000 people into the wilderness. Nearly half of the population had been removed from the lands they once held in Shanji Prefecture, abandoning the remote areas altogether. With their belongings packed, they had all migrated into the wilderness. The desolate land that had lain empty for 100 years now brimmed with life. Several safer settlements were established, many disciples were stationed to maintain order, and more than 10 Qi cultivation realm cultivators, followed by even more at the embryonic breathing realm, were dispatched throughout the region. As Kong Guxi calculated the land now under Profound Peak Gate's name in the wilderness, he felt a measure of relief. It's not too little. Enough to sustain the disciples we have now. The only issue is the lack of abundant spirit veins, which makes things difficult for Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators. Fortunately, we can still rely on the Li family's spirit mountain. The Li family had proven themselves generous. Most of the lands the Profound Peak Gate had once held in the wilderness had now been entrusted to Kong Guxi's care. Though he occasionally heard reports of Shanji Prefecture being attacked and plundered, he no longer had the time or energy to worry about it. All the loyal ones have moved here. From now on, the wilderness will belong to the Kong family. As for Shanji Prefecture, let them raid it if they wish. It's beyond my control. So long as it remains in our hands for even one more day, that's enough. Halfway through his flight, he noticed from afar that his people were all gathered atop a mountain. Li Chenghui stood off to the side with a spear in hand, making Kong Guxi's eyelids twitch. He sped forward and landed on the mountain just in time to hear Li Chenghui say, "Gate Master Kong, you finally returned. There's an important matter we must discuss." Kong Guxi glanced around and saw Kong Qiuyan, Kong Xiaoxiang, and even another key figure, Kong Gyuli, all waiting at the side. He quickly stepped forward and said, "Please give your instructions. I wouldn't dare call it an order." "I merely wish to speak with you," Li Chenghui said solemnly. "I received news earlier. My family's Taoist master has gone to the Purple Smoke Gate and sent me here to deliver a message. He asks that your gate retrieve an item. What item? Kong Guxi grew uneasy at those words, fearing he might mention something like Kong Heiying's severed head. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead, but Li Chenghui said, Taoist Master Chengxi once left behind something beneath the main seat of Stillness Peak Hall. Please send someone to retrieve it. Kong Guxi quietly let out a breath of relief. After glancing around, he chose the most reliable among them, Kong Gili, and said, I must trouble you, elder brother, to make the trip. Kong Gili nodded and left, leaving Kong Guxi and the others standing helplessly in the mountain. Kong Qiuyan glanced at Li Chenghui, then at her own gate master, unable to focus on anything. In the end, she could only lean against the doorway and wait. The elderly Kong Yu, still not fully recovered from his injuries, wanted to ask questions but dared not. He could only pace restlessly. It was only when the sky began to darken that a streak of light approached them. Kong Gili hurriedly descended onto the mountain, carrying a stone box in his hands, and said, There were rather intricate secret techniques concealed beneath the seat. That's what delayed me. Kong Guxi was in no mood to respond. He opened the jade box, and the Kong family members all leaned forward to look. Their eyes were filled with alarm as they saw a single piece of cloth lying inside, bearing only one line of writing. In urgent times, expediency must prevail. Shanji Prefecture and the Profound Peak Gate shall be entrusted to Taoist Master Zheajing. The cloth had been written by the Taoist master himself and had already transformed into a jade-like texture. Its smooth surface reflected their anxious faces. The elder Kong Yu read it twice before finally speaking. It is the ancestors' immortal decree. Seeing that the decree posed no issue, Li Chenghui then took out another jade box from his robe and removed a stiff, stone-like spiritual cloth. He placed it on the table, and the room fell silent as they leaned in to read and trust Taoist friend Zheajing with the care of Profound Peak Gate. Should the situation turn unfavorable, Shanji Prefecture may be handed to another family in exchange for aid. The Kong clan was struck dumb. Shanji Prefecture meant as much to the Kong family as Moongaze Lake did to the Li family. Losing all of Shanji Prefecture would be like the Li family losing its 16 prefectures and 2 mountains. They would be left with nothing but a barren Pingya Island. For the Kong family, losing Shanji Prefecture meant they could never return to their ancestral gate grounds. All they could do was remain in the wilderness and serve as a shield for others. Although they had already relocated so many people and had faintly anticipated this outcome, seeing it laid bare before them still left them disoriented and lost. Kong Guxi was stunned as well. In all honesty, after the battle on the river, Kong Guxi had already realized how vast the gap in power was between Profound Peak Gate and their enemies. His thinking had long diverged from that of the rest of the Kong family. He had long since come to regard Shanji Prefecture as something that no longer belonged to them. So no matter how fierce the battles in Shanji Prefecture became or how much it was plundered, while the Kong family wept and raged, Kong Guxi gritted his teeth and felt no real sorrow. All his attention was focused on what had once been their subordinate lands and was now their new territory, the wilderness. But Chengxi's final decree mentioned another place, the mountain gate itself. Even their own mountain gate had become a bargaining chip. Then what of Kong Heiying and Kong Tingyun, who could neither be moved nor abandoned in that mountain? No matter how difficult things were, Kong Guxi could endure it as long as there was a glimmer of hope. But without those two, what would the Kong family even be? Barely a breath later, Kong Guxi dropped to his knees with a thud and was the first to cry out, Profound Peak Gate reverently obeys the Taoist master's decree. The sky had grown dark and his voice, imbued with mana, echoed across the mountain through the night wind. From Kong Gili to Kong Yu and even the disciples scattered around the mountainside all pondered the weight of those words. Obey the Taoist master's decree. Which Taoist master? What is Shanji Profound Peak Gate now? If there is no Shanji and no Profound Peak Mountain, is it still Profound Peak Gate? Yet their bodies reacted faster than their thoughts. Like wheat being cut down, they all dropped to their knees together and shouted in unison, Profound Peak Gate reverently obeys the Taoist master's decree. Li Chenghui was about to help him up, but Kong Guxi continued his kowtows and said, The Taoist master has moved our people and left Profound Peak Gate a place to survive. All of Profound Peak Gate is deeply, immeasurably grateful. We have no way to repay such grace. The crowd recited the words like lost souls, their voices choked with sobs. Only after finishing did Kong Guxi rise to his feet and speak with heartfelt gratitude. I must trouble you to make the journey. If there is any news from Shanji Prefecture, please inform us as soon as possible. We will swiftly relocate the few dozen people still remaining there so as not to delay matters or cause any misunderstanding. Li Chenghui gave him a complicated look, then nodded and rode the wind away. The moment he left, Kong Qiuyan collapsed to the ground, while the young Kong Xiaoxiang, eyes reddened, rose to his feet. He looked agitated, strode forward, and with a loud bang shoved open the hall doors in anger. Kong Guxi, who had been hunched over the whole time, suddenly exploded into motion. He stepped forward and grabbed Kong Xiaxiang by his Dharma robe, yanking his face toward him. The gate master was like an enraged lion as he roared. What do you mean? What do you mean? Speak. What do you mean? His voice cracked like thunder, shaking the entire hall and snuffing out every spiritual lamp within. Darkness swallowed everything from sight. When he met Kong Guxi's blazing eyes, Kong Xiaxiang's once fierce and indignant expression softened. Gritting his teeth, he said, Gate Master, this junior intends to deliver the decree. Only then did Kong Guxi release him, speaking in a hoarse voice. You are in no condition to go out now. Stay here on this peak and go nowhere. We will speak of it again in 3 to 5 days. The eldest, Kong Guli, watched the entire scene without saying a word. Only Kong Yu wiped his tears as he left. The old man, ever prone to self-pity, flew alone into the night and vanished from sight. After more than 15 minutes, Kong Guxi slowly stepped outside the hall. The lamps outside had gone dark as well, and he lifted his gaze toward the sky. He noticed that there was no moon hanging in the sky. The forest winds howled mournfully, and the entire mountain peak was drowned in darkness. His disciples stood lined on both sides, their faces swallowed by the night, features indistinct, as if each one of them was trembling.